in yoga therapy. So with this, I would like to invite Dr. Kalsa to give his keynote address on yoga research then and now. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Professor Pradeep. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here to give such an address to your conference, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. I've been asked to speak on the topic of yoga research then and now, which is an interesting topic for me because I've always been interested in the history of research on yoga. So let's start with yoga research then. Let's look at perhaps where the first ideas of research on yoga began. And I think without a doubt, the most central figure early on that was addressing this idea of research was Swami Kavalananda in Mumbai. And this is a quote from him in 1924. Persons that are equipped with an undying faith in spiritual culture and its attainment through yogic practices require no scientific interpretations of these for their progress. But those that take their stand upon reason would be satisfied with nothing short of a scientific explanation of yoga if they are to be induced to take it. And I think this quote, almost 100 years ago, is really prophetic. It shows just the vision that he had. And currently, this whole idea of the value of research is very important because we need research to demonstrate the efficacy and safety if we have any hope of introducing yoga into mainstream society's institutions. And I'm referring to the healthcare system, the education system, into schools, as well as into workplace institutions. So research has become very important in modern society for the hope of yoga to really be spread amongst society as a whole. Swami Kavalananda had the insight not only to start a yoga research journal, Yoga Mimamsa, which is still being published today, but he also founded the Kaivalyadhamma Research Institute, which is still running today. And he and his colleagues at Kaivalyadhamma in their yoga research laboratory started in 1924, and in this journal published 56 papers by Kavalananda from 1924 through to 1973. Now, a lot of his work was really using sort of primitive measures because of the time that he was doing this research in the 20s and 30s. And a lot of these studies were looking at the physiological and physical effects of yoga practice, looking at practices such as Uddiyana and Nali. And these are some of the figures from some of the first issues of Yoga Mimamsa in the 20s. Now, one of his students, K.T. Bahanan, actually published a book in 1937 based upon the studies that he'd done at Yale University looking at different pranayama practices. One of the major types of research that took place in the early 20th century was to examine what was going on with long-term advanced practitioners, with these master yogis. And this was a study that was conducted by Therese Bros in 1936. She traveled to India and evaluated the claim whether yogis could stop their heartbeats. She was not able to show that equivocally, but she was able to demonstrate that they could slow their heartbeats down, which introduces this a very important construct in yoga of self-regulation of internal state, the ability to control internal functioning, in this case, controlling autonomic function. Das and Gasteau, looking at yoga meditation, did EEG studies to show that when yogis were reporting these altered states of consciousness, there could be seen actually these dramatic alterations in brain waves, suggesting that what was happening with these yoga practitioners was indeed manifesting in the central nervous system. And as you can see, the heart, the EKG was slowed substantially, suggesting also that there was this profound effect on the autonomic nervous system, the control of heart rate. Perhaps the most comprehensive study of this kind was a year-long study by Bakshi and Wenger, published in 1957. They spent an entire year hunting down these yoga masters and hooking them up, and they concluded from this study that physiologically yogic meditation represents deep relaxation of the autonomic nervous system without drowsiness or sleep. And again, this really highlights this fundamental concept in yoga and in mind body medicine of self regulation of internal state. And the autonomic nervous system is important because it is one of the systems that controls the stress and emotion response. And the other system that has now been shown is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which is another stress response system, which is also under self regulation through these training practices of yoga. B.K. Anand at All India Institute of Medical Sciences was one researcher of a long lineage of researchers at AIMS who were interested in studying yoga practices. In this study, looking at EEG changes, they were able to show that in very deep yogic meditation, the central nervous system was not responsive to sensory inputs because of this phenomenon of no alpha blocking during the deep meditation states. In the West, perhaps one of the biggest pioneers is the late Dr. Herbert Benson, who unfortunately just recently passed away. And some of his early research was on transcendental meditation. And following this line of research, he was able to show dramatic changes in things like oxygen consumption and metabolic rate during these meditative practices. And he coined the phrase the relaxation response, which is essentially the opposite of the fight or flight and stress response. Again, a very clear indication of how yoga practice can lead to improvements in stress and emotion regulation. Now, let's jump forward to the present time to see how far we have come in terms of our technology and the research results. And one of the most profound types of technologies is neuroimaging. So this is one example of this, studying meditation in the brain scanner. In this case, this is the fMRI. And we are now seeing studies of meditation being conducted in the scanner to identify how the brain is processing during meditation practice. One of the kinds of studies that's being conducted is to compare meditators with non-meditators and to see if their brain activity is different. Many studies have been done like this. This particular study did show these observed changes and showed that there were changes in the attention networks and those relate to emotion and autonomic function, which matches very well with the idea that when you meditate, you focus attention, and to the behavioral evidence showing improvements in emotion and autonomic function regulation. Another technique that can be done with the fMRI is to examine single neurotransmitters. In this study, over a single yoga class, it was demonstrated the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA was increased, and that was associated with an improvement in mood state, which GABA is known to participate in the central nervous system. Another phenomenon that's been observed is brain plasticity, changes in brain structure. And this was a study looking at long-term yoga practitioners examining cold pain tolerance, demonstrating that the yoga practitioners in the black dots exhibited higher pain tolerance than non-practitioners in the open circles. And they also did imaging to calculate the volume of the region of the brain involved in pain regulation, and that was larger in long-term yoga practitioners than it was in non-yoga practitioners. And this occurred with an increase in the duration of yoga practice in terms of the number of years of practice. The longer these long-term yoga practitioners had practiced, the larger that region of the brain was, suggesting that indeed we can change brain structure. So these very powerful neuroimaging results have allowed us to conclude that yoga makes changes in brain activity, brain biochemistry, as well as brain structure over longer term practice. Now, some of the ongoing studies have looked at exactly what regions of the brain are involved in meditation practices. And what we're seeing in this particular study, they were able to show that during the focus phase of meditation, when people are successfully holding their attention, the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex and the executive regions of the brain and the attention networks are being activated. However, when the mind slips into wandering inadvertently during meditation practice, that pattern of activity is very different. This is activating the so-called default mode network. And through these studies, we're starting to understand the relationships between these different regions of the brain. And we know that the prefrontal cortex, the executive regions of the brain, are exerting inhibitory control over the limbic system. In fact, some studies have shown that long-term meditators actually have a smaller amygdala. These are structural changes that take place over time. So this is allowing us to understand in a very precise and profound way exactly how meditation is working in the central nervous system. Now, another technology that is very modern that's now starting to be applied in yoga research is molecular biological approaches, particularly examination of gene expression. As you can see from this slide, this is the central dogma of biology that DNA ultimately produces proteins which are responsible for all activities in psychophysiology. And we know that we can affect these genes. We can change the activity of these genes, gene expression. And we know, for example, that if people engage in unhealthy behaviors, they can trigger cancer genes to be upregulated. So, for example, people that smoke cigarettes are activating perhaps those cancer genes that may develop a tumor. And we know that if we engage in healthy behaviors, we downregulate or reduce the activity of those cancer genes. So the question has been asked, yoga is a healthy behavior. Can it affect gene expression in positive ways? And research is answering that question with a resounding yes. This is the work of Herbert Benson's group at Harvard Medical School, and they showed enhanced expression of genes associated with energy metabolism, mitochondrial function, insulin secretion, and telomere maintenance, and reduced expression of genes linked to inflammatory response and stress-related pathways. And once again, this very powerful objective evidence is really confirming the behavioral evidence of improvement in inflammation and improvement in stress. This is another study at UCLA showing that a yogic meditation was able to suppress expression of inflammation-related genes and upregulate expression of genes involved in immune function. And furthermore, it's been shown to have an effect even on the level of the telomeres, the ends of the chromosomes. Meditation practices in this study have been shown to increase levels of telomerase, which help restore the integrity of the telomeres, whereas a simple relaxation technique had no effect. So these, again, are very powerful objective measures of our psychophysiology. And the other thing I'll point out is that these are not small changes. These are statistically significant changes, and they are clinically significant changes. These changes that we see in the central and autonomic nervous systems and in the endocrine systems throughout the body are just as profound as anything that we can get from a pharmaceutical. So this really puts us on a solid footing with respect to arguing that yoga has real credibility with respect to its effects on psychophysiology. Now, this research and all of the research that's been done from the old research to the newer research has allowed us to develop this logic model, which really accounts for the effects that we see with yoga practices. Now, by yoga practices, I'm referring not just to asanas, but also to pranayama, to deep relaxation, and the meditation, to traditional yoga practice. Each one of these practices alone or together as yoga improve functioning on the physical level in a box I'm calling fitness. This includes things like flexibility, strength, coordination and balance, respiratory function. And through the mind-body connection, that increases self-efficacy. All four of these practices, individually in separate studies and together in yoga studies as a whole, improve, as we've said, self-regulation of internal state. Most importantly, stress and emotion regulation, which over time with regular practice leads to resilience to stress and equanimity in the face of the ups and downs of emotions. And that leads to an overall psychological self-efficacy. Now, it is primarily through the meditative component of yoga practices that we ultimately increase mind-body awareness. This has also now been known as mindfulness, which has become a very important construct in modern psychology. By the engagement of the attention networks in meditation practice, we're increasing the functioning of the attention networks, which improves our cognition, our concentration, and over time leads to the state of metacognition, the ability of self-regulation of thought processes, which is exactly what has been described in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the idea that these meditative practices allow us to self-regulate our stress and emotion reactivity to our own thought processes. And the understanding and the realization that we are not our thoughts, that we are a higher self that can exert some degree over our degree of self-regulation over our thought processes. Now, it's also the case that over longer term practice, typically, and through the meditative component, many people will start to experience these unitive states during their practice. These are experiences of transcendence, of the flow state. And these very profound changes can lead to a deep transformation, a change in life meaning and purpose. And this can be very profound. And I'm putting this in a box that I'm referring to as pure spirituality. So one thing you can see from this model is that we're making changes across a broad spectrum of functioning, from gross muscle and connective tissue to the deepest experiences that humans can have, and all of these other constructs as well. And when we look at the research, we have very, very strong objective research, both from the old research and the new research that measures these sort of very physical changes, such as flexibility and oxygen consumption. And it's been over the past 2 or 3 decades with these more powerful techniques of imaging, of EEG, and molecular biological approaches that we're really starting to come to a more complete understanding of self-regulation and the increase in mind-body awareness. And there's a weak area here in terms of studying these deeper changes in spirituality, but it is possible to do these studies. And there are existing number of studies that have already shown that there are discrete changes in spirituality with longer yoga practice. Now, because we're making these changes across all of these functions, we're seeing changes in global human functionality, from the gross level of physical and mental health and performance to the deeper skills of stress and emotion regulation, awareness and mindfulness, and ultimately this very important state of metacognition. And then ultimately, typically, with longer practice, and now we're talking about more along the lines of months and years of regular practice, many people will start to experience these deeper positive psychological states. They'll engage in positive behaviors. They'll have improved well being. They will change their values in a positive, more spiritual, less materialistic direction. They will have an increase in life purpose and meaning, and what we can refer to as an improved, higher level spirituality. So the research has really been responsible for us to be able to create this kind of a logic model. And this now gives us a new language for yoga. It's the language of modern biomedical science, which happens to be the language of modern society. So now when we talk about yoga and promote yoga, we can use the language of science to describe how yoga is working. And all of these constructs have relevance for virtually any kind of human circumstance, whether it's children in schools, or whether it's in the workplace for burnout and stress, or whether it's for many physical and mental health conditions, because a lot of these constructs are central risk factors and healing entities for the treatment of many types of medical and psychological conditions. So now I also want to sort of step back a little and talk about where we are in modern history with respect to how it's manifesting in society as a whole. And Kaivalya Dhamma, the institute that Swami Kaivalyananda started in the early 1920s, is still very active. It is a very active research institute. It holds yoga research conferences on a regular basis. They do training in yoga therapy. So it is still a very active center. And this institution still is publishing Yoga Mimamsa, a yoga research journal, on a regular basis. A major institution that is engaged in yoga research is SVYASA. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Manjunath, who is participating, I believe, in this conference, is the research director there. And this institution is responsible for an enormous body of research and continues to be extremely active in conducting research. They also host a journal, the International Journal of Yoga. They host yoga conferences on a regular basis, and they do a lot of research on their institution grounds, and they collaborate extensively with many other researchers in India. Patanjali Research Foundation is based in Haridwar, and the director of this institution is Shirley Tellis, who was for many years a key player at SVIASA, but she now directs this research group, and they have been very productive over the past few years that this institution was recently founded, and they continue to be very active. In Puducherry is the Center for Yoga Therapy, Education, and Research. And Shirley Tellis, of course, is I think, a speaker in this conference, as is Dr. Ananda Bhavanani. And Dr. Bhavanani and his colleagues have been conducting yoga research as well as doing yoga therapy training in a very comprehensive way at this institution in Puducherry. Some of the major Indian institutions are now also engaged in research on yoga. So at AIIMS in New Delhi, we have the Center for Integrative Medicine and Research, and they're very active in conducting trials on yoga, particularly with respect to healthcare and multiple disorders. And one of the focuses, of course, has been non-communicable diseases, which are highly prevalent in India. The National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, Bengaluru, has developed its integrated center for yoga, and they have been conducting a wide variety of studies. They've been looking at yoga for depression, yoga for schizophrenia, and this has been very productive research that's really giving us a lot of insights into the potential of yoga as a treatment for many mental health conditions. In Europe, my colleague Holger Kramer has been doing an enormous body of research. He's based at the University of Duisburg-Essen and an integrative medicine center they have there. And over the past decade, Dr. Kramer has published many, many papers and is one of the leading researchers in yoga at the present time. And he serves as the editor-in-chief of the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine, which is one of the key journals in the field of integrative medicine. And the other thing that we're starting to see is the use of yoga in a systematic way for the treatment of medical conditions. And this has been happening. This began really in India in the 1920s. Swami Kaivalyananda's institution was engaged in that. In fact, Swami Kaivalyananda published the first book on yoga therapy, which was commissioned by the Indian government in 1963. And so this construct of yoga therapy is now being applied across many countries. Here, based in the United States, we have the International Association of Yoga Therapists. This organization accredits yoga therapy training schools. There are now over 60 schools that are accredited as yoga therapy schools in the United States. And ultimately, the graduates from these programs become certified yoga therapists. This organization has a trade journal called Yoga Therapy Today, and they have an annual meeting called the Symposium on Yoga Therapy and Research, in which all of the members of this organization gather together to share techniques and improvements in application of yoga therapy in modern medicine. Fortunately, this organization is very receptive and supportive of the idea of yoga research. And for the past over 25 years, they have published the International Journal of Yoga Therapy. Furthermore, they have also supported me in conducting the Symposium on Yoga Research. So for the past 10 years, we've held this annual pure academic yoga research conference here in the United States. And this helps us build the field by bringing trainees, by sharing the evidence, and by promoting the whole field. Now, as I mentioned, I am the International Association of Yoga Therapists publishes the International Journal of Yoga Therapy. I'm currently the editor-in-chief of this journal. But what we are seeing now is a whole slew of additional journals that are devoted to yoga research. So Yoga Mimamsa continues to be published. The International Journal of Yoga Therapy began in 1990. The International Journal of Yoga at SVIASA began in 2008. And look at the dates now of many additional yoga research journals. Many of these are based in India. So this is an area that's really thriving. And as a consequence, we are seeing more and more publications. We are seeing many reviews and meta-analyses. So this is an example of a number of reviews and meta-analyses that have recently been published. So for example, this one at the top on stress, yoga and immune function, neurophysiological and neurocognitive mechanisms, stress again, and self-regulatory mechanisms for psychological health. In fact, this is an exploding area. If you do a simple PubMed search with the word yoga in the title of the review paper or meta-analysis, this is what you see. And so virtually at the turn of the century, there were very few review papers. But look at this dramatic increase. In 2020, there were almost 50 reviews and meta-analyses on yoga research published. So this is an exploding area of research. And this is not the same researchers doing more publications. These are new researchers coming into the field, which is really exciting. It's starting to really catch on in terms of its popularity, and that is leading to its relevance to things like modern medicine. And this whole application of yoga therapy is something that we've looked at. This is a bibliometric analysis we conducted in 2015 looking at yoga therapy research publications, yoga specifically for medical and psychological conditions. You can see this tremendous growth in the last couple of, between 1999 and 1913 of all of these papers, and the quality represented by the randomized controlled trials also increasing dramatically over this period of time. And that has manifested itself into the discussion of yoga in many media formats and academic institutions. In fact, Harvard Medical School invited me to be the medical editor of this special health report from Harvard Medical School entitled An Introduction to Yoga. And in this book, we describe a lot of the research that's been done to show the efficacy of yoga in multiple functions and multiple disorders. And if you go onto the Harvard Health Publishing site, there's actually articles on yoga talking about the research that's been done. So for example, on this page, they're saying that research suggests that this practice modulates the stress response. And we've also taken advantage of this boom in yoga research and the many yoga researchers that are out there to have published this book, this medical textbook entitled The Principles and Practice of Yoga in Healthcare. This is an edited medical textbook written in biomedical language for and by yoga researchers. There are 23 chapters, all discussing the theory, rationale, and research and practice of yoga for multiple different conditions. So this is really a sign that we are moving into the mainstream, into modern medicine. This is our passport, if you will, to modern medicine. So hopefully we can see yoga research taught in medical schools and then practiced by physicians. And then finally, the other thing we're starting to see is that we are starting to improve the quality of the research in yoga. And that is manifested by yoga publications now starting to show up in leading biomedical journals. So this is research that was done by Jojo Kwok in Hong Kong. This was a clinical trial looking at the efficacy of yoga in Parkinson's disease, published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA Neurology. We in Boston have a team that published a research in JAMA Psychiatry, looking at the efficacy of yoga for the treatment of generalized anxiety disorder. There's a team, the team at S. Vyasa has published this paper in 2020 looking at the efficacy of yoga for diabetes. This was published in Nature Scientific Reports. And then more recently than that, in 2021, a team based in the US looking at the techniques practiced by the Isha Foundation showed molecular changes, gene expression changes with the practice of these meditation techniques. Now, finally, the biggest thing that I think is really important is that we're actually starting to see funding for yoga research, which is really important for its future because we cannot move forward unless we have the funding. So, of course, in India, the Ministry of Ayush has been in place for many years. And Dr. Raghavendra Rao, who is one of the speakers at your conference, is the director of the Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy. So there is a funding source for research on yoga. And here in the United States, we have had since 2001 the National Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. And I can tell you very clearly that had this agency funding yoga research, had this agency not existed, I would not have been able to conduct the research that I've been conducting on yoga over the past 21 years. It has been critical because you really need the funding in order to conduct research in a significant way. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to address any questions that there might be.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Khalsa. That was an enlightening presentation, like walking you through as from what Dr. Swami Kovalyananda started and where we have reached in terms of the kind of research and institutions coming together, like not only just yoga as a therapy and but as a evidence-based practice. And we are very sure, and you're one of the most important contributor in making yoga as an evidence-based medicine and what we see today. And we as an institute have been following a lot of your publications, and it is really inspiring for your students down here who learn yoga for 5.5 years as a part of their medical curriculum. And on behalf of Ministry of Ayush, represented by Moraji Desai National Institute of Yoga, and our institute, Sandhya Dhara Medical College and Sandhya Dhara Yoga and Nature Care Hospital, we would like to thank you for your time. And it is like, and again, we are very grateful in terms of like considering the time zone difference, and you have been giving an excellent presentation and looking forward to a long-term collaboration and association between your institute and ours. And thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. And I hope someday, once the pandemic is done, to actually be able to visit your institution and to interact with you all in person. So thank you very much again for this honor, and namaste.
Sure. Thank you. That's a pleasure. Thank you. So moving on, that was our keynote address, and it was like really enlightening to see how we have traveled from yoga's ancient wisdom, and now it has become an evidence-based therapy which has entered medical schools. And with that, it's a right keynote setup for introducing our next speaker, who is one of the stalwart who has been working continuously for bringing in yoga into the mainstream by integrating yoga into all the possible way, starting from education to sports. And what we can see over here, the visionary for yoga research as well as practice and making yoga as a public health tool. We have among us Dr. Ishwar Basawareddy sir, who is the director of Moraji Desai National Institute of Yoga. And first of all, at the outset of this meeting, I would like to thank Dr. Basawareddy sir for giving us the opportunity to selecting Bhopal as an iconic location for taking this 92nd day of countdown towards International Day of Yoga. So Dr. Basawareddy will be giving us a small introduction about why this International Day of Yoga and how important it is as a public health intervention from the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji. And I invite Dr. Basawareddy sir to give his presentation. Dr. Kula, can we please give the sharing options?
Yes, screen share option is one. I welcome sir. Sir, pranam sir. Good morning, sir.
Namaste, namaste.
Sir, we are very thankful to you for giving us an opportunity for making this event a success. And without your intense support, it was not possible at all to go on the iconic place and do the yoga. So it was really, we are thankful to the ministry and yourselves for giving us opportunities. Thank you. I welcome you, sir.
Yes. Shall I start?
Yes, yes, sir.
Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. I want to share.
It's enabled, sir. You can share.
Can you see?
Yeah, we are able to see.
You need to make it as a slideshow, sir.
Is it okay now?
Yes, sir. Now it's fine.
But I will use these slides a little later.
Sir.
My pranams to you all. Respected principal and vice principals of the esteemed college, and Dr. Gulab, Dr. Pradeep, faculty members of the college, student friends, yoga and naturopathy practitioners, researchers, and I noticed the presence of Dr. Satvir Khalsa ji. Just I heard for last half an hour. Most importantly, the mentor of the Sant Tirviram College, Haji, all of you, and my namaste to all. I just take 5 to 10 minutes regarding the International Day of Yoga and its importance and how it's making a huge impact on public health. First of all, you all know that on 27th September 2015, Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has made an appeal at the 69th United Nations General Assembly to adopt International Day of Yoga. In a record time, less than 3 months, on 14th December 2014, United Nations adopted the motion to declare 21st June as International Day of Yoga by consensus of 177 countries of 193 countries of United Nations. There was no opposition. This was a historic moment. Many people consider it as a routine, but there is an effort of more than 3-4 decades by the eminent yoga masters of our country, spreading the spiritual and cultural heritage of this country across the globe for health and well-being in general, particularly for harmony and peace of the entire mankind. So in my opinion, that was a historic moment. After that, you might have seen many international days or world days are being celebrated. Some of them are very important, but the kind of the momentum the International Day of Yoga has taken up during the last more than 7 years, no event being organized. So why it is happening? Because in India, over the years, yoga is a part of our life. Today, people talk yoga means some asanas, some Surya Namaskara being taught. But if I remember my childhood, what we are learning by paying fees has been taught in my school, at my home, by my mother, parents, and teachers, without mentioning it is yoga. That means yoga is an integral part of our Indian living. Because of the modernization, technology, and the influence of so many factors, we slowly going away from our healthy lifestyle, Indian culture of living, healthy living. Now this International Day of Yoga helped us to rethink and redo what our yoga masters spreading across the globe from more than 100 years, starting from Swami Vivekananda. I don't want to name only few, there are several. But ultimately, International Day of Yoga, it's not only for yoga community who are teaching and practicing yoga. It may be a scientist, physical scientist. It may be a biomedical professionals, anybody, sports, political persons, any walk of life, any field of specialization have embraced yoga and its practices for health and well-being. Now, for small token of information, in 2015, when we have a mass yoga demonstration, we are taking only for few thousand, 5,000, 3,000 people together and practice and celebrate. But the amount of emphasis, the amount of interest Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji has taken up, the first one, it is unimaginable. And that went on to organize it on the Rajpath, where more than 40,000 people have been practiced. And it was a Guinness record. It was a very well organized. If you see the total participation, maybe 2 to 3 crores. We don't have the records, but across the globe, there may be around 2 to 3 crores people have practiced that common yoga protocol developed by Ministry of Ayush. And second time, it is more than 5. And fourth year, we started assessing. It has 9 crore people as per the assessment, documented. And in last year, it was 15.97 crore people practice common yoga protocol on that day. Maybe small modifications. So it is documented, in my opinion, during last 7 years, more than 27 crore or 270 million people practiced common yoga protocol in one form or the other. That means in India, I'm giving the statistics of the globe. One practice being practiced by more than 250 million people, it's not a joke. That is the acceptability, that is the importance, that is the need of the hour of yoga and its practices nowadays, that itself tells. So in my opinion, it is one of the biggest public health movement ever in the history. And for many researches are being conducted on impact and importance of yoga on public health, especially the common yoga protocol. Yes, there are some modifications. There is 30% modifications by different schools, different regions. This is the history now. Now, taking into that, every year, Ministry of Ayush, our institute, Morarji Desai National Institute of Yoga, Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy, National Institute of Naturopathy, in association with many eminent leading yoga institutions, naturopathy colleges, universities, social organizations, government bodies, autonomous bodies. So it's a huge, all sections of the society. Even we go to the Asha workers, Anganwadi workers, Gram Panchayat. So we have not left out anyone. This was the impact that it has. Now, last year, with WHO collaboration, our institute has brought up Yum Yoga app. It was the effort of more than 2 years with a consultation of more than 72 experts for more than 2 years. WHO has agreed to bring up a Yum Yoga app, where we have a teaching models of for well-being for 45 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, and also there are teaching models both in audio and video format. Now they are being released into different various UN languages and also Indian languages. So once it is happening, and anybody across the globe can practice this common yoga protocol and assess it and make use of it with modifications according to the region, according to the season, according to the individual capacity, and it can be adopted. It is going to make a huge impact. In my personal experience of practicing yoga for more than 46 years and also teaching yoga for last 34 years, I would like to emphasize that anyone who practice yoga for 40 minutes to 45 minutes for more than 12 weeks continuously will bring behavioral modifications. Yoga needs time, it takes time, any modification, any change. I assess that. That's what we inform, that minimum 3 weeks of practice, and then it is 3 months continuous practice will bring the change in different conditions, especially the behavioral modification occurs. Therefore, looking into this, Yoga Certification Board brought up yoga volunteer program of 36 hours of training in 24 days. So continuing that for more than 3 months, we will have a very important changes in the health parameters, management of non-communicable diseases. So what we are talking about. So being a WHOCC, our institute during last more than 10 years. So we did a lot of meta-analysis, lot of compilation of the research, and we found simple 40 minutes or 45 minutes of yoga practice will have a huge impact on various health conditions and disease conditions. So where eminent researchers across the globe are working on it. I noticed, I heard Dr. Satbir, but I would like to inform you, Iyengar Yoga and Transcendental Mahesh Yogis are huge research papers on transcendental meditation. There are more than 5,000 research papers on the public domain on meditation itself. And also on Iyengar Yoga is one of the very important lineage of yoga. And on that also we have hundreds of research papers. And most importantly in yoga, the practitioner himself is a researcher. Every teacher is a researcher. Unless he research, we take only the parameter. This is the difference I had with the medical fraternity, including subject culture. Because yoga, while doing research, the teacher is more important. The who is teaching. We are taking the parameters, but yoga is more related to the mind management, mind-centric practices. So the objective and subjective parameters has to be taken into consideration. Therefore, in our institution, so we ask the teacher who is teaching yoga protocols, so be present every day, the changes in their different behavior. We may not get the requisite changes in the medical parameters, but he start talking well, sleeping well, eating well, behaving well. He is more comfortable. That's why this common yoga protocol, I said, for yoga for well-being. It keeps us well, sleep well, eat well, talk well, work well. So this, without spending any money, for 40 minutes, 45 minutes a day, makes our life wonderful and beautiful. This is the impact. With this, this year, our Honorable would like to emphasize on Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. Therefore, we have chosen that 100 days, 100 cities, 100 organizations will take up. But now we are going to have a iconic places, heritage points, where suppose the Bhopal, there are several iconic places which are not known by many people, which can be a tourist spot. Through this Yoga Mahotsav, we want to get them on the global map. Yes, in Bhopal, Rudram Naturopathy College is there, but at the same time, there are several tourist iconic places where you perform yoga, put them in the global map, and so that they people come to aware our culture. It may be a temple, it may be a nature, it may be a lake, it may be a port, anything. Here it has the public interest. Public can see that one. Therefore, we have chosen 100 organizations, 100 cities, 100 locations, 100 iconic places. So we have started. So it's a very short notice. Rudram College, Principal Gulab, Dr. Gulab and Pradeep, everybody has taken up this our invitation, accepted it and organizing it very well on behalf of Ministry of Ayush, on behalf of Morarji Desai, National Institute of Yoga, on my own behalf. I heartily congratulate Sant Haridram Yoga and Naturopathy College for taking up this initiative and making it. It's not end of today. It is not going to end today. Today is the beginning. So you can make this one throughout next 90 odd days, so that at the end of the day, we are going to have a huge impact, lakhs, not in thousands. So now in the next 15 days, we are going to organize 1 lakh meetings, 1 lakh meetings. Our target this time is 27 crores. Therefore, it is the beginning of the Mahotsav, the beginning of these things. With this, what will happen? The practitioners, yoga practitioners, when they increase their pound, they start asking for the quality teaching, validated teaching, the traditional knowledge, but it should be validated scientifically. First of all, scientifically, then medically, wherever it is possible. It's a long way to go. So therefore, it is a scientific, yoga is a science and it should be taught scientifically. Then there is an increase in the demand for the teachers, therapists, physicians. So like this, this goes a long way, and that reduces the health budget. We are spending more on the prevention. So if you spread 27 crore people practicing yoga every day, just imagine that much of burden on the health budget will be reduced. So it's not a small issue, and you are contributing that. You should be proud of. I am proud of. So this is the way how we should take up this moment. This is not an event, it's a moment. So you are all part of it. Our ministry has not left anybody, any organization, any individuals, and everybody joining hands. So once again, I thank and congratulate the institution. And just for information, and I would like to take up some slides. Impact of important NCD in public health. 65 million deaths that occurred globally in 2011. 36 million, that is 63%, almost 2/3 were due to non-communicable diseases. 9 billion deaths that occurred among people under age 60. An estimated 32 million NCD deaths, 80%, were due to cancers, cardiovascular disorders, chronic respiratory disorders, and diabetes, and other 8.3 million from the other NCDs. So just I'm giving NCDs associated with various behavioral risk factors, which in tune precipitate several physiological and metabolic risk factors. Common risk factors you all know, I will skip many of them. Behavioral risk factors, physiological, psychological, and metabolic risk factors, and leads to communicable diseases. So diabetes, cancer, hypertension, etc. There are 5 major NCDs recognized by WHO. Yoga is being practiced as a preventive medicine for health and also for promotion of health since ancient time. Regular and systematic yoga practice promotes physical as well as mental health and has great effect in promotion of health and prevention of the many disorders, particularly NCDs. So these are the something, and I remember my teacher, Dr. Nagaratna Didi. In 80s, she used to teach. So disturbance starts as mind, manomaya kosha. When mind is disturbed, and it has the impact on indriyas to the prana. So then the disturbance in the breathing pattern in the long run have the impact on our nervous system. Then it enters into the disturbance in the annamaya kosha. Various organs and systems are affected. Then disorders first, then disease they will convert. These are the yogic principles. Then I prefer this yoga intervention. How to give it, even this 45 minutes protocol. Purification, diet modification. These are the prerequisites. So postural modification, breathe modification, that brings relaxation. When you are relaxed, then only you advise concentration. Prolonged concentration leads meditation. When you start meditating, then only there is a behavioral modification. Otherwise, it's only for the research, but it's not going to sustain. Take my words granted. In other words, in my opinion, yoga is meditation. Yoga begins with dhyana. All what we are doing practice are practices leading to dhyana. So this is our these 2 slides are my favorite slides. On these 2 slides, I advocated and developed a minimum 20-26 yoga protocols, including the COVID times. Yama-niyamas are quality control or prerequisites. How much a teacher emphasized on yama-niyamas and made them to follow, that much of good results we get. That's why the degree of accuracy depends upon the yama-niyamas are being followed. So that also I have a wonderful business. So we have a ahara, we have a sukshma yama practices. Surya Namaskara now more than 75 lakh people practiced on 14th of January this year. It's the biggest mass movement, and it is for the vitality, improvement of the vitality. We have a cleansing practices. These are the practices we in the common yoga protocol. I'll skip because time is less. And ultimately, how yoga works. Whenever we practice yoga, it reduces the stress. Whenever we are stress-free, there is a mindfulness. And when mind is calm and quiet, it has the right metabolic activities. That is enhancing the easy digestion, absorption, circulation, elimination. That is feeling the relaxation. That complete relaxation all the time, action in relaxation, enhances the positive health. So research in yoga and non-communicable diseases. Number of peer-reviewed journals published in the yoga as evident by PubMed 271, diabetes 593, on cancer, hypertension. It's so I think so. Time is very short. Just I slide up. So I will give the entire meta-analysis from 2006 to 2021. Under WHO CC, we have analyzed various such practices, effect of yoga on hypertension, diabetes mellitus, and we developed protocols for the 5 NCDs based on the researches available. So in my opinion, stress is the most important factor. So when relaxation of the mind and body, mind-body coordination, it improves the self-awareness, brings the calmness, increase serotonin and GABA, decrease in the HPA axis, cortisol, and dopamine. So it has the impact on cancer also. Ultimately, what you would like to achieve in the positive health or in the well-being, it's a flexible, active body, calm and quiet mind. Emotions should be always in the normal state, both positive and negative. Always positive, optimistic. Action in relaxation. Always calm and quiet. Inside, outside. That will bring the blissful awareness. That's the beauty of yoga. Thank you, one and all, for the wonderful opportunity. So I have gone through fastly, but we have another occasion. Definitely from our institute itself will provide you a lot of meta-analysis data under WHO CC. We did it. We are happy to share with all the colleges. Last but not the least, all the youngsters, my humble suggestion and request, yoga is a practical science. Unless you practice, you experience, you cannot be a good teacher. You cannot be a good researcher. What's happening? Many of the medical practitioners are modern medical practitioners, scientists are doing research. It is very, very appreciable. But at the same time, are they practitioners? Few of them are the regular practitioners. Many of them are not practicing yoga. Once you practice yoga, you develop the affinity. Now, yoga is my life now. Everything is yoga for me. Because I practice, I adopt. I owned it. So once you do that, and when you are teaching, that affinity comes. The body alignment, breathe alignment, everything. So you don't need any teacher. It comes on its own if you practice yoga regularly. This is my humble suggestion. Do practice, adopt it, and teach it with your experience. You find protocols. So all the traditional scientific knowledge is there. We are talking about only papers, etc. It's good. I'm not at all denying. But where we are lacking in our self-experience, self-evolution, self-modification. I want to see thousands of yogis will emerge from the naturopathy colleges. They will make the impact, huge impact on the public health. My best wishes. Thank you, one and all. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, sir. I would like to invite Dr. Gulab to propose vote of thanks for this session.
So thank you so much for joining us live for this program. Sir, what the request you have made, humble request for our college students, youth, everybody, sir. And they will be taking up this to the next level. Our youth generation, I assure you that they will self-evolve first, then they will spread the word of yoga. And anyway, it's a time like
ministry is supporting us so much in a form of yoga and naturopathy, and especially yoga for creating a huge awareness in villages, in day-to-day activity, applications, and of course you, sir, you are the motivating leader for us, taking this huge ministries, this mission towards success, sir. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity for making this Yoga Mahotsav in a Utsav form and making all the youths in a Utsav form. So we all are very much delighted to have you and have your knowledgeable speech, sir. And we assure you that till Yoga International Day, we will be doing the programs as you suggested, sir. So from our institute, every day there will be a program, and there will be every day there will be an update on the online, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So shall I take leave?
Yes.
Sure, sir.
Thank you, sir.
So that was a wonderful session we are having from morning. We heard Dr. Sadbir Singh Khalsa, followed by Dr. Ishwar Basavareddy. So one was on the importance of research then and now, and another one was about the public health importance of International Day of Yoga. And Dr. Khalsa also have mentioned one name who was we all are proud of from Yoga and Naturopathy fraternity, that there are few people who led the path and mentors for entire BNYs, as well as Yoga and Naturopathy physicians who always aspire to become a researcher. The one among them is like Dr. Raghavendra Rao, who has explored or took yoga to a different level, and yoga and oncology was his area of specialization. Like when we all in college were wondering whether there is a chance to explore in yoga, he took it to the next level. And he is rightly now placed as a director for Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy, and mentor for many of us in yoga and naturopathy research. And so we have chosen a topic for him. We don't know whether he's accepting that. We have asked him to present on what are the tools which we can use in yoga research, because there are a lot of youngsters down here who want to motivated and guided in the right direction. So I am very sure that it will be an enlightening speech for all of us, and always it is a pleasure to listen to you, sir, and welcome you to this Yoga Mahotsav 2022 and the National Conclave.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. Namaskar. Thank you, Dr. Pradeep and Dr. Gulab, for having me here today to speak and share my views with all your students and faculty in your college. And as part of this Yoga Mahotsav, indeed, we take a lot of pride in seeing that we try to improve the activities of yoga and naturopathy also. It is very, very important that our community plays a very, very vital role in participation in these kind of programs. As Dr. Ishwar Reddy, Dr. Basavareddy ji had mentioned just before, how MDNMI has been doing this work from the last 7 years, along with CCRYN and NIN. And I think all these three institutions are, they're in the government sector, but we require the help of all the NGOs, all the educational institutions to take these things and to make this outreach program more effective and take it to the mass level. To the mass level. So I would begin my talk by sharing my slide. Okay, is my slide visible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Thank you. So today I'm going to talk about yoga research and its applications. So there's a lot of change in the way yoga research is happening in the world over. A lot of people and a lot of technology is also coming to the fore. And now the research is not just going from a mere blood sampling with respect to HbA1c or glycated hemoglobin or whatever it is going much deeper and deeper into genomics and omics, I can talk about. So we'll come to that later on. So basically, if you look at the history and evolution of yoga, so we know that yoga was there thousands of years ago, and it has been very greatly put by our sages, rishis and munis. The practice of yoga, the inner practice of yoga, the inner journey of yoga. And their laboratory that time was nothing but their own body and their own mind. So they were using their own body and their mind, using this body, this life, as a journey to attain the state of super consciousness, or samadhi we call it as. Okay, and that laboratory was nothing but it's their body and it's their mind. Okay, so these these were all mostly propagated in the West and by recently in the West, the yoga masters starting from the early 19th century onwards, Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, Swami Vivekananda, Sri Aurobindo, and many other stalwarts of yoga were there here. So you must have seen all these people who have really contributed a lot to the growth of yoga, not just in India, but also in the global arena. So if you look at these masters, if you look at the yoga research part of it, the earliest evidence of yoga research can be traced back to Kaivalya Dharma by Swami Kovalyalanda in his ashram in 1920s, where he used a drum kymograph to look at the respiratory effort during different types of kumbhaka or pranayamas. Okay, and this was published also later on in 1971 by a very good review by Pratap et al. Okay, and later on the Westerners got more inquisitive about yoga, about samadhis, and about the siddhis, yogas, or the yoga masters were possessing. So they traveled widely across India and started meeting these masters, and they started doing a lot of experiments on these masters. The earliest known finding about a siddhi is by Yogi Satyamurthy. For 60 years, he went and he was put under a deep pit about 6 feet deep, and he was there for almost around 5 days. And in there, he was able to voluntarily stop his heart beating. Okay, this has been published in the American Heart Journal, a very prestigious journal during that time. Okay, and this is one of the first evidence of siddhis which have been documented by Westerners as well as by Indians, and this laid the foundation for going deeper into yoga research. It was the siddhis accessed by these masters which made people very inquisitive about the effects of yoga, and that's when they started to know how yoga can modulate the physiology of the body, how it can bring about these extra powers which is seen in these masters. And these were a lot of people were there, like Green, Dr. Wallace, and so many other people who did a lot of work on transcendental meditation, on different types of yoga, on different types of samadhi as well. So this is the earlier part of the research, which was published in 1960s and 70s. And then later on, if you see the literature on PubMed, especially with respect to yoga, has gone by leaps and bounds. So if you look at yoga in medicine, and if you look at yoga and meditation together as a PubMed keyword, you can see more than 16,069 articles on yoga and meditation alone. Okay, from 2014 to now, if you see, this has increased by almost 8%, a very huge leap in yoga since IDY was announced, since International Day of Yoga was coined by UN in the December of 2014, and first IDY was celebrated in 2015. Since then, yoga has become popular globally, the world over, and it has been more and more publications you see in the Western countries as compared to India alone. So this is a very good landmark thing which happened. The IDY celebrations, popularity of yoga also boomed, and more people start taking up the practice of yoga. Now, when you talk about yoga research, you should always have a research question. We have to have a proper design and methodology to answer the particular research question, and we have to have some outcome measure. Measure in the sense you say measure. It is a measurement. You are trying to measure something. Like for example, if yoga in diabetes, you want to measure how much the blood glucose came down by using a yoga intervention daily for a period of 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is. Right? So whatever you're trying to look at is something which is measurable. That is an outcome measure. Okay, and these outcomes can be very gross, like HbA1c, very subtle, like cytokines or genes or SNPs or whatever it is. Okay, it can be very subjective from a questionnaire. It can be objective. It can be a sample, it can be a blood, saliva, tissue, urine sample, or it can be a physiological measurement like heart rate variability, or ECG, or EEG, or fMRI, etc., or image analysis like fMRI, etc. Okay, selection of these variables depends upon your research question, depends upon the infrastructure you have, depends upon the expertise you have, and also depends upon the money you have. It's very important because most of these are very costly, and they require a lot of expertise. They require a good laboratory setup. They require a good infrastructure setup. And if you want to do some image processing, you require image processing tools. You require somebody who's well versed in analyzing those images. Okay, not just just an ordinary radiologist will not do. Somebody who has experience with doing fMRI, who has experience in doing MATLAB. Okay, so all these things are required to process these images. So analytics, data analytics also plays a very important role in yoga research today. So today what we see in yoga research is we give more impetus to experimental research, randomized controlled trials, and clinical trials, and mechanistic studies. These are the ones which are mostly under the domain of the Ayush practitioners, or even medical practitioners who are looking at these things. But what is also important here is literary research, know more and more about the yoga process itself, the kind of yoga to be done, what kind of siddhis come out, with what kind of practice. So going deeper into that is also very, very important. Quasi-experimental studies, subject to experiences of people who have attained this kind of siddhis. All these are also very, very important on the other end, which is unfortunately lost its charm, and people are not really pursuing that anymore. So we also have less number of people who have these kind of abilities, but even though those people have the abilities, we are not able to get those people as subjects for experimental studies to unravel the mystery about yoga. Okay, so these are some of the important aspects, and you can go into the neurons. You can look at neural plasticity. You can look at different functions of different organs and tissue systems. You can look at genomics, proteomics. You can look at microbiome. So there are a lot of possibilities on yoga research today, and the more and more deeper you go, the more and more the data becomes very, very huge data. Okay, for example, when you look at a genomics sequence, if you look at a microarray data, if you look at the number of genes which are expressed with yoga, number of genes which are not down regulated with yoga, just a small simple thing as that, by looking at the peripheral blood mononuclear cells, you are isolating the RNA or DNA from there, and from them you're amplifying that and doing microanalysis and looking at the gene expression here. So a huge amount of data is there. Okay, and you need good analytics to big data analytics are required to isolate that particular data, find a pattern in that data, find what is outstanding in that particular data. Okay, so this is a very, very important aspect. Same thing with imaging as well. See, huge number of pixels, 1 TB of pixels are there in fMRI image, one single fMRI study itself. Okay, and among those so much amount of pixels, millisecond, every second you have 30 image sequences being taken per second in fMRI. So imagine amount of data which is there in 1 second of a task. Okay, so that much amount of image has to be processed, should be analyzed, and so many amount of pixels have to be analyzed. And you will require more sophisticated tools, image analysis tools and softwares and mathematical algorithms to isolate those pixels which are outstanding, really know the functioning of the different areas of the brain. So when it comes to genes, or when it comes to brain for that matter, you have huge amount of data which is there. More subtler you go into these areas, more amount of data you have, and you require to have good analytical skills and good analytical softwares to isolate and make meaningful use of those data. Okay, so what is happening today is you can see artificial intelligence, and this has been used rampantly in various other modalities, right, like driving a car, like a Tesla car, or doing anything in small tasks such as Facebook, like Google. Okay, everything is learned. It's a learning process which happens there, and these are machine learning, deep learning, neural networks. You must have heard about robotics, which automates the process and flow in a work environment. Okay, and fuzzy logic systems. These are all some things which are there with respect to artificial intelligence systems. And mind you, these are also found to be very, very useful even in case of the yoga kind of studies. And I'll come to it later on why it is useful in these kind of studies and where it is being used today. Okay, this is one thing which is a domain which is really needs to be explored, and a lot of startups are now coming up in this particular area, in this space, trying to use this artificial intelligence, and they're trying to use these kind of algorithms and this kind of technology to go deeper to unravel the mysteries of yoga. Okay, so for example, if you want to look at a study by V.R. Hariprasad, published in Indian Journal of Psychiatry, look at yoga and hippocampal volume in the elderly. Okay, so he showed that the hippocampal volume decreases, and as you grow older, but this is improved with respect to yoga intervention. Okay, so this is one kind of study, and it required huge amount of data which had to be analyzed using a MATLAB software for arriving at the conclusion. There's a similar study here, response to a meditation, placebo, sham, or control group with respect to pain stimulus. You can see on the second row here on top. Okay, the amount of signal intensity with the pain stimulus is reduced in the meditation group compared to the other groups. This indicates that meditation helps in processing the threshold of pain. It increases the threshold of pain and reduces the pain stimulus, okay, significantly in practitioners who practice meditation compared to placebo or other groups. So this is another study which did which was on fMRI. So when you look at same thing with respect to omics, look at gene expression studies, huge amount of data is seen like this. You can't make a head nor tail out of this data. The only way you can make head nor tail out of this is by looking at isolating this data into meaningful forms. How much of genes are expressed in yoga, how much are expressed in controls, how many of them are common in both yoga and controls. Okay, what is unique to yoga is stand out like this on the blue circle here, and what is common here, what is common to both is there in the intersection here. This is there, and these can be really taken out to the next level, be it in microbiomics, microbiomics or transcriptomics or metagenomics, whatever it is. We can use this kind of data, huge amount of data, and analytics play a very important role in this analysis as well. So I won't go into the study of this. So similarly, if you look at various diseases, there's another area which is very promising is look at neurodegenerative diseases, especially brain imaging. So if you have Alzheimer's disease, there are what is called amyloid beta protein deposition inside the brain, in the tissues inside the brain, and these can be really visualized using a radionuclide imaging or PET-CT, we call it as positron emission tomography CT scan. So where we use carbon-11, carbon-6, gallium-68, fluoxydeoxyglucose, all these are some tracer molecules. You can tag them to these antibodies. They go home onto the site and help in diagnosis of all these diseases above. So they can even go to the extent of diagnosing the preclinical stage of the disease, the preclinical manifestation of the disease, and they can also be useful for analyzing the prognosis of this disease following a yoga intervention. Okay, so this is again radionuclide imaging. We call it as is a very promising area, which is now coming up in a very large way, especially in cancer research. Is taking off, and we are yet to see some amount of changes with respect to yoga or anything else for that matter. So apart from this, there are so many other areas which can be used here, where deep learning, machine learning, and artificial intelligence is being playing a role. So I will go to the technologies which have been used today, which can be used for enlightening yoga research. One is on movement called DOSI, which is called as a ballistocardiogram. So I'll come to that later on. We have smart yoga mats, which have pressure sensors which tell you which kind of asana you're doing, whether you're doing the asana correctly or not. We have we can measure stress levels using a small ECG. There's a study called Bruce Lee study published in Rajiv Gandhi Super Specialty Hospitals and Indraprastha University, where they looked at T-wave inversions. Come to that later on. You can use the heat signature, infrared imaging you can do to find out relaxation response on your face following a relaxation technique. You can use sound waves or ultrasound to do look at wound healing and other things. Okay, you can use luminosity, the intensity of the light reflected by the different tissues inside the body. Look at wound healing as well. You can use radar. Okay, radar signals we can use for looking at respiratory distress. We can use PPG, photoplethysmography, for measuring pulse diagnosis as well. So I'll come to all this later on. The first one is the chronic care, which has been used in wound healing. This is a Singapore startup, and this is very, very interesting. And if you had if you had a diabetic foot, a diabetic ulcer, it tells you the depth of the ulcer. It tells you the sinus which is being formed, the fistula or the sinus which is being formed by the particular ulcer. It tells you at what depth it is going, is healing or not healing. Everything can be done with just with the help of your mobile camera. Okay, just using a mobile camera and the particular software is able to tell you the details. So this mobile camera has got a small attachment you can see on the right side. And this is a specialized camera which can reflect the light intensity. It's got a sensor which takes in the different types of light intensity of different tissues. So by that it is able to tell whether your wound is healing or is it getting further infected or not. This may be very useful in naturopathy setup where people come with diabetic foot or diabetic ulcers and they are there in the naturopathy center for long-term rehabilitation. This can be used for monitoring those kind of wounds as well. Second thing is a very interesting thing. It's a small doll you can see here. This is called as a Ray Baby. It's a startup based out of Bangalore, and it is a very big company now in US today. It is more than $180 million company now. Okay, they just have a small doll, stays very near to the cradle. When the baby is lying in the cradle, if it starts crying, it gives an alert on your mobile saying that the baby is not sleeping, it's crying now, it's woken up. Okay, just by measuring the respiratory signals of the baby, the sound of the baby. Same thing is now used in geriatric care. People who are in ICU or in HDU, high dependency units, and who require constant nursing care and attention. If they have a respiratory distress or a cough or anything which happens, immediately it will alert the doctor saying this person is having respiratory distress. Okay, so now this is also being used in geriatric care as well, and this can be used also in all of the yoga kind of research because we do a lot of work on pranayama and other things. This radar can also be used to modulate different aspects of pranayama. In fact, we have been talking to those companies to see to find out whether can we modulate the pranayama, the inspiratory, expiratory flow, can we quantitate in these subjects doing pranayama practice. If they are doing kumbhaka, how do you know they are doing kumbhaka? Okay, we need to have a respiratory belt on them. So it's not possible all the time. So by using a non-invasive thing, a small contact is placed just 2 feet away from the person, you'll be able to monitor the amount of inspiration, amount of expiration, expiration ratio, as well as kumbhaka as well. Okay, so there's a lot of possibilities, and this is a study called Bruce Lee study, published very lately during the COVID times by Rajiv Gandhi Super Specialty Hospital. Dr. Amit Jain was involved in this particular study, and he shared this paper with me. It's a very interesting study. They looked at ECG signals, they looked at P waves. So what they saw was in healthcare workers, there's a P wave inversion that was happening, which is occurring in milliseconds in the V1 lead of ECG, and this they used to look at as a measure of burnout stress in healthcare workers who are involved in COVID care of COVID patients. Okay, and we know heart rate variability is also a marker of stress. A simple ECG where P wave inversion can be seen can also be used. This happens in milliseconds. So they used artificial intelligence and deep learning mechanisms to isolate the P wave inversion, which is happening in milliseconds in the V1 lead, and this one can be used as a marker of stress. Now they're working on developing a prototype instrument for measuring stress in normal population. Okay, then you have the smart mats. So a lot of mats have come up in the last 3-4 years. They are based on pressure sensors. Okay, and they're also based on motion sensors. It will tell you what kind of asana you are doing. Okay, it will tell you the position, alignment, etc., and all those things. So this can be used as a virtual kind of a teacher. So somebody sitting virtually, you're doing online class, whether you're doing correctly or not, this mat will further reinforce and give data to the teacher saying that your subject is doing this wrong. So it helps the teacher to correct the particular posture in his particular subject. This is also based on artificial intelligence and algorithms. We'll come to that later on. So this is one more called I was talking about was infrared imaging. So you can see here on the left and right side, these are our own people in SVASA, our own interns who came to SCG hospital. So we did this study because we are using this for breast cancer imaging. Okay, the left side you can see the breast cancer imaging which we have done. Same camera we used, or FLIR it is called. Look at infrared imaging of the face. You can see the temperature here, 37.5 degrees centigrade before relaxation, and after relaxation technique it is 35.4 degrees centigrade. It came down by almost 2 degrees, huge amount of change. Okay, so this is the kind of thing which you can see following relaxation response. So it will tell you it's a very good indicator of peripheral blood flow and can be used to measure relaxation response in individuals. So this is another thing which is a gadget. It is basically, we call it as the magic glove, or it's again a company based out of Bangalore. And this is a lady who had a son who was suffering from epilepsy and other things. She devised this particular glove to measure for epilepsy basically, and look at heart rate variability. Now this same thing is being also used, okay, for measuring sleep, stress, and heart rate variability, etc., muscle tone, etc., and galvanic skin conductors as well. So this is called a company called Terra Blue, based out of Bangalore as well. Another one is Ayurhythm. So what is they are doing is a plethysmography. So they have a smartphone camera. You have the LED sensor, the light at the back of the camera. Place your thumb or index finger on the back of the camera, the LED sensor. It measures your pulse volume and then gives you the PPG data. And we have been using this, especially in case of Surya Namaskar. Before and after Surya Namaskar, what is change in the heart rate, diastolic BP, systolic BP, oxygen saturation, and reduction in arterial stiffness as well. So arterial stiffness index can also be measured by using this particular PPG as well. So this has been already highlighted in EMANS as well as in HCG before. And we are now trying to do this validation in Surya Namaskar before and after Surya Namaskar as well. Okay, so this also has got a very nice application. They have been done by using it will tell you about the prakriti. It will tell you how much or what kind of prakriti has been disturbed. Okay, I'll not go into all these degrees. It will tell you the vikruti part of the person, whether the pitta is gone up or kapha has gone up or vata has gone up. What is happening here? Okay, and this is the kind of mobile app. It is there in both Hindi as well as in English. It will tell you, gives you personalized wellness. Tells you if you are a vata kind of person, what kind of yoga to do, what kind of diet to take. Okay, how much amount of hours of sleep is required. So all these things are done by using this particular person as well as we also had a chance to contribute to this particular thing. So next is another or called which we also used in our COVID-19 studies. So this is based on ballistocardiogram. You can see here it's a small sensor sheet below the yoga mat, goes below the shoulder levels on your interscapular area, and then it measures your heart rate basically based on ballistocardiography, means the motions of the heart during systole and diastole. It doesn't measure the electrical activity of the heart. So they have very good algorithms to remove the noise, remove the movement artifacts, to also isolate the respiratory movements with the cardiac movements as well. So this has been used in elderly care, useful for measuring sleep disorders. So this is how it is. The sensor can go under the mattress also. Even if your mattress is, just a second. So even if your mattress is around 16 inches thick, you can still measure your heart rate and heart rate variability.
Hello. Yes. Yeah. Hello. I guess we lost the connectivity with Dr. Ravindra Rao. Just a second. Okay. So unfortunately, Dr. Rao has some connectivity issue. So I would like to. Hello, sir, can you hear us? Okay. So thank you, Dr. Ravindra Rao, sir. Like, unfortunately, we had to stop it in between because of this poor connectivity issue. It was like very enlightening to see how things has been discussed from the morning. Like Dr. Khalsa has discussed about the yoga research which is available as of now. Then we have got another one perspective from Dr. Ishwar Basavareddy about the public health importance of International Day of Yoga. And now it is my privilege to introduce Dr. Manjunath Sharma, who is the Pro Vice Chancellor of SVYasa University. Similar to Dr. Ravindra Rao sir, Dr. Manjunath sir is also a mentor for many of the yoga and naturopathy researchers and yoga researchers across the globe. And he is one of the global icon for yoga research, has been in the leading committees for many research related activities to yoga and naturopathy also. And currently is the director of research as well as the Pro Vice Chancellor of SVYasa University, Bangalore. And he'll be presenting on what is it important to all the youngsters to take up yoga research rather than just learning yoga. What is our contribution into yoga research and how we can take it up? And I would like to invite you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pradeep.
Yes, sir.
Good morning to everyone, and it's my privilege to be with all of you today. And I was also listening to some of the other talks. Thanks to the Sant Sridharam Institute of Naturopathy and Yogic Sciences and all the faculty members and the management for organizing this wonderful program as part of this Amrit Mahotsav activity supported by MDNIY. And today I have been asked to talk about something which is very close to my heart, and Pradeep always catches me to say something to our youngsters. Okay, so the topic given to me is how do we empower the young minds with a research aptitude so that they can actually take up yoga research. So I'll be quickly sharing some of the slides Pradeep, if I can.
Yes, sir. You can actually. You are a co-host, so I guess you can share.
Yeah. Just a second. Hope my slides are visible, right?
Yes, sir. It is.
Thank you. So the journey has started some time back. What I'm going to talk today is, in a way, my own journey and journey of several other people who have entered yoga research sometime earlier, or those who are going to take up yoga research in future. So the whole idea behind talking about empowering young minds to take up yoga research is to actually create some misconceptions. I mean, there are misconceptions created, and we are going to ensure that those misconceptions have been removed. And second thing is to actually give a proper direction whereby the true advantage of adding research to your career can be explored very well. As I said, there are lots of misconceptions about yoga. I mean, particularly research in particular, and yoga research in when you really want to bring it as part of your career. So people think that research is meant for intellectuals who are either eccentric or introverts. So you always remember somebody has to be recognized as a researcher. He will be recognized with some special personality trait. Okay, so actually the idea of somebody need to be an highly intellectual, and somebody needs to look inwards, not outwards, to explore is a misconception. Research today has grown, and the advancement has happened in several fields purely because of the simplest ideas and thoughts. And these are not the so-called intellectuals who have attained greatest marks in their colleges and schools, but those who have actually thought about a problem. Okay, the problem can be whatever it may be, what they have seen on a road, to in their profession, or whatever is bothering the society. Hence, it's definitely not right thing to say that you have to be highly intellectual. There is an advantage for those who are highly intellectuals, because they can actually apply certain questions directly, because they will have accessibility to knowledge, which they have acquired over a period of time. Second thing is, research is not a lucrative job. So research cannot give you money. It's unfortunately a wrong statement to make today. I have the last slide to talk about this once again, that research is the second highest paid job. Okay, so apart from those who are administrative or business heads, etc., who also need to be researchers, without which they cannot deliver, they cannot perform their duties as administrators. Even apart from keeping those people aside, if you look at puristic researchers working in several fields, what you see is this is a very lucrative job. And it's also said that by doing research, you will get limited name and fame, because people always relate it. How many of them can get a Nobel Prize for doing research, or whatever those bigger awards which have been identified with research? Honestly speaking, it is not true that researchers look at only Nobel Prize. Okay, of course, Nobel Prize can be one of that final goal. in life, but there are lots and lots of accomplishments what you can derive when you are in this process, which can certainly provide you a decent name and an amazing fame. Another misconception is it keeps you away from mainstream profession. So the minute if you are identified as a researcher, it is said that all other professions on one side and research is an isolated profession. It is not true. Research is incorporated into every profession. Without research, no profession can progress the way it has progressed today. Because research, what we look at, like life sciences research, using gadgets, understanding physiological changes, looking at the body, etc., is just one part of it. Research includes several other dimensions without which we cannot progress. And the last misconception is it is very difficult and challenging profession. I know youngsters always think that, oh my God, sir, research don't tell me, because I truly, it's not my cup of tea, because I, number one, don't know how to really think about those research questions. And number two, I truly don't want to get into that process of designing a study, then doing statistical analysis, and most important is sitting and writing. Okay, so you look at very one small portion of research as a profession, but there is a very bigger dimension where you can contribute in your own given framework, not doing other things, because there is a wonderful support system available today in the world to promote research. So having said that, these are just some misconceptions, ideas, what people have developed over a period of time. Let us understand what exactly the truth is. The truth is that research is an inherent quality of every individual. You don't need to be called as a researcher, senior research fellow, research associate, professor, etc., to become a researcher. Okay, each one of us, right from our birth, we have this quality, and we keep on exploring. A small baby explores each and everything, and that learning will help that baby or a child to progress in its life, and those strong memories are going to help that individual for a long time to come. So research, whether it is any profession you are doing, research becomes an integral part of it. So hence we call it as research an integral part, and every activity is driven by research. So imagine you want to go out for a holiday. Can you just take your car and go to a place without making any plan? That's where the research comes, and you do it in the best possible way without your knowledge. Whatever you do at home, everything involves research. Whatever you do at your workplace, be it as a clinician, yoga teacher, yoga professional, yoga therapist, and a medical doctor, every day, every activity is driven by research. So you do it in your own way, but you don't call it as that conventional research, but that's all is involved in research. It's very well said that no growth or progress can be achieved without research. Today, whatever you see in the world, all that is possible only because of research. Imagine we had whatever you see today, be it the bulb what you use, then television what you use, or the cars what you use to commute, everything have progressed from such a simple level to such an advanced level. Surgical interventions used today, medical advancements made today, everything has become possible purely because of research. You improvise, you work on an existing thing to make it much better and make it more user-friendly and make it more economical. There are lots of such yardsticks which you use to develop such tools. So each individual is endowed with great intellectual capacity. As I said, as a misconception, there is a idea that to do research, you need to be highly intellectual, and you are not an intellectual, which is totally wrong. Each one of you have got an amazing capacity of actually doing an intellectual processing. Okay, like whatever you do, somebody is good at one aspect of life while the other is good at something else. So someone is good at designing a yoga module while somebody else is good at teaching a yoga module. A doctor is good at diagnosing a condition while some other doctor is good at providing treatment to ensure that they can reverse this condition. So each individual has an intellectual capacity. We need not think that everything should be similar and then only you can become a researcher, which is actually not true. And also, communication is possible in several ways other than writing. Many people shy away from research because they think that they cannot sit and write. Many people who have started, like our own community guys, Pradeep and many others, who have taken writing itself as a profession and also promoting this skill in several other youngsters to demonstrate that writing is not that what we think. Okay, so writing is just a way of communication. Keep writing also aside, there are 100 ways to communicate. So a researcher can communicate. Today, you don't need, there is a video mechanism, there is an audio mechanism, there is a way of just putting images, there's a way of reflecting your idea in totally a different way than simply writing. So communication is no more a limitation. So don't get frightened about it and don't shy away from research. So sharing knowledge is the greatest virtue, and it can make life very meaningful. So research is the only tool which can help you to do that. When you look at yoga-based research, I know several researchers have already spoken, and some more may be talking about it. So the whole idea, when you talk about research in yoga, or any research for that matter, starts with curiosity. Without curiosity, nothing emerges. Particularly connected to yoga, the research became much more evident or interesting when people started understanding the health benefits of yoga, and they started applying it in disease management. So we always look at this as a process. Why we do research in yoga? Maybe fundamentally to convert tradition into science. We are not telling tradition is not science. There is a great science hidden in our tradition. But using present day tools and present day understanding, we convert it into a language which is applicable to today. So probably, how do you understand an experiential science by experimental methods is what we are going to do in research. Those who are interested to understand different ways of getting into research, you can look at fundamentally 4 processes: literary research, basic research, clinical, and applied. Literary is the one which is going to support all other styles of research in yoga in particular, because what we do is we compile traditional literature on various concepts and practices of yoga. You get an amazing amount of cues or clues from ancient scriptures, which will make your research process or help you to refine your research question in a much better way. It also helps you to explore ancient methods and mechanisms. I'm going to give you 1 or 2 examples on this, and also help you to compare and correlate Oriental and Occidental approaches, Eastern and Western approaches. And of course, literary research can certainly help you to ask deeper research questions. Second area is basic research, I said, to understand the physiological effects, to explore cause and effect relationship. Like we always say that we know yoga works, but how is the question? That's where you need to do research to understand the underlying mechanism. That Raghavendra Rao was talking a lot about these mechanisms part of it. So research is the only way where you can connect these dots and you can make this aspect very clear. You can also categorize practices based on immediate and long-term effects and understand methods of combining various techniques, and also which helps you to develop interventional tools. And of course, very important is to identify adverse effects and limitations, if any. It's always said in yoga that yuktabhyasa yogena sarvaroga kshayo bhavet, ayuktabhyasa yogena sarvaroga samudbhava. Yoga is not the problem, but the way it is taught and practiced is the issue. So if it is done under supervision of a qualified service provider, then yoga will remain as very safe practice. So it is important through research to identify these problems associated with the delivery of yoga or understanding of yoga. So when you look at yoga, what comes to your mind are probably some of these techniques: asana, pranayama, relaxation techniques, meditation, kriyas, etc. If you want to understand, a lot of research has already been done in meditation, and studies have already been done on asana and other techniques. But how this whole process starts? So I'm giving some clues to youngsters, those who want to somewhere adopt yoga research, is by understanding this dimension of yoga research, which is already there. Like around 60% of research comes from meditation research, 30% from pranayama, and 10% from asana. Yoga research can start from amazing research questions. But research questions can also come to you from any source for that matter. For example, in this image, what you see, this is a WhatsApp image, what I received. On top, you have the Bhishma Pitamaha of yoga doing modified Setu Bandhasana. Below, you have an Irish yogi, intoxicated, tried his best to achieve a similar posture. Now the question comes, are the physiological effects remain same just by bending the body in a particular way? So you get such questions, and then you look at ancient scripture, you get additional cues. For example, headstand is one practice what everyone wants to achieve at one point of time if they start doing yoga. So if you look at Hatha Yoga Pradipika, it says that this practice increases the inner fire. One who practices it regularly should eat adequately to meet the increasing needs. I mean, we just read these slokas and forget. When you want to actually use them for an application, it will give you lots of inputs. Okay, so then we take such inputs from ancient scriptures, ask a research question like what I said earlier, that however you bend your body, are the physiological effects going to be same? Because here you see there are so many variations of shishas, and we did a study like looking at what exactly happens when you do shishas and taking wall support and with wall support and without wall support. When you do this kind of a study, you get a direct inference. You can draw direct inference saying whether bending a body just in a particular way going to produce similar effects. So we did this study looking at some time back, looking at headstand with wall support and headstand without wall support, demonstrated that those who did with wall support and without wall support showed some common changes like increased sympathetic tone measured by heart rate variability, while the galvanic skin resistance which indicate the rest component and the mental relaxation component was significantly higher resistance, more relaxed you are in individuals who are doing it without wall support. Imagine we think that those who do without wall support will have a lot of anxiety because they might lose balance, etc. But yoga provides you that proficiency, and research can make such points very clear. Another area associated with asanas today, very popularly known as biomechanics. What you look at is today with lots of tools, you can understand the precise way of actually using your musculoskeletal system to achieve the desired benefits of yoga. Probably you will understand an individual capacity with which he is starting and to what level he can progress can also be understood well in advance if you can adopt these kind of mechanisms, and research can help you to do that. For example, you ask the question, is it really necessary to understand joint angles when you do different yoga asanas? Certainly yes, because it can have lots of it can really bring in an impact when you actually practice it without any preparation, and also when you give it to patients with limitations. How do you translate this ancient knowledge also into modern science? As I said, research can facilitate this. So one sloka says, Stiram Sukham Asanam, posted, which is firm and pleasant. Then you look at the modern day understanding, essential components of biomechanics, which talk about maintaining a position using the following indices, like a weight-bearing joint should be firm, so that is the source, and the plane of motion should be smooth. Then center of gravity and lane of gravity should be well coordinated. Muscles which are supportive, both agonists and antagonists should be once again taken care. And once you are established in a final position, you should not disturb yourself anymore. Similar, another example is like you have another sloka, Prayatna Shaitilyam Ananta Samapatibhyam. So with slightest effort, you reach a final position, and once you are once you reach there, you just get established there without any further effort. So in biomechanics, we talk about force is needed for motion. But when you use force, so it is not a continued force what is needed, but you use it as, because inertia is the principle, and you use that force to create a motion. And once motion is set and you reach a final position, it anymore, because there is a process of transient acclimatization which body understands, and it starts facilitating through all other physiological processes. Last but very important definition to be kept in mind is tathodvandva anamikataha. Because to achieve anything, you need samatvam or balance. So when you are doing asanas, it's like pace of opposites working, okay, to reach a state of balance. It can be muscles, joints, the signals going as part of proprioception and physiological processes. So all these should be kept in mind to bring in that balance kind of it. So why I showed these three shlokas and some narrative associated with that is to create a kind of a link that research questions can come, and research can be made so simple if you understand this ancient principles, which we call it as the literary research leading to basic research. The second component, pranayama, similarly, like you take one clue, chale vate chale chittam nischalam nischalo bhavet yogis tanutvam apnoti thado vayu nirodhaye. Today you have Dr. Raghavendra was talking about PET CT to MRI to other things, and we have functional near-infrared spectroscopy to EEG to several other techniques, using which you can demonstrate and make it very simple that, yes, you want to relax yourself, you don't want to get disturbed, stress is bothering you, it's very simple, just you regulate your breathing, okay? You slow down your breathing, bring your breathing to 6 breaths per minute, probably you don't need to do anything else, because the switch for parasympathetic activity gets on, okay? Similarly, you slow down your breathing further, bring it almost to a pause state where there is no inhalation, no exhalation, a state of kumbhaka, then it's said that even your mind also attains a state of calmness, and it settles down with no thought state. These ideas are amazing, and you can study and demonstrate, and you can develop techniques, you can give it as interventions, and it is very lucrative. Okay, so but you need to have that mindset to understand. So as I was telling, there are 100 techniques to understand these things, and it is very much possible, and you can apply these things into several areas. One of it which is mentioned over here is talking about application in professional swimmers. which we had trained Indian swimming contingent going to Asian Games, who were trained with Kumbhaka-based breathing technique. So once you understand what exactly happens, take it from literary research, apply it in basic research, then bring it to application, you have a amazing satisfaction. The last technique is meditation, which is highly studied. Lots of understanding has emerged through research and literary basis of meditation. So when you look at them, what you try understanding is, like, there are various processes which can involve structure, which can involve function, which can also involve an application in a condition, a health condition. Everything can be not just inferred, but also understood very well. So this talks about the function part of it. So when you do meditation, it is so well said that what happens is you can selectively activate specific areas of the brain. We compared Ekagra, Chanchalata, Ekagrata, Dana, and Dhyana, 4 phases of meditation. And it shows that it simply, as you move from one to the other, the number of thoughts can be brought down. When it happens like that, there is more inhibition, selective activation. So, and also it's not just the function, but the structure. So you can influence, or you can probably modify the structure of your brain. Brain is one indicative, and we are looking at several other aspects in the body. Can we bring in regeneration? It's a very big question to ask, but already studies have been done on regeneration of hippocampal gray matter, and how actually you can understand its implications subsequently as part of applications, and also use meditation for pain management, etc. So you can look like application. That's the final goal of research. So you can improve physiological functions leading to homeostasis, reduce stress response, facilitate relaxation response, improving perception performance, use as a wellness strategy, and part of preventive healthcare activity. Imagine just doing one research can give you so many ideas, and each idea can make you create a profession in it, and it can give jobs for thousands of people. So that's the beauty of research, what you need to understand. And last part is the therapeutic application. We always ask few questions. Why we need to do therapy research? Because we have this question in mind, whether one practice or many practices of yoga needed to achieve a therapeutic benefit. Should there be a disease-specific practice? How long and how regularly does one need to practice for achieving those benefits? And what should we study to understand these things? It is very essential. Okay, otherwise everybody has a common understanding that you do 1 hour of a yoga every day in the morning, you get all the solutions. Today, we need to move on beyond this to understand, do I need to split this across morning and evening? Because many people do practice for 1 week to 10 days and they discontinue. People practice for 3 months to 6 months and they discontinue. Adherence to yoga is the biggest problem. How do you develop this with better ideas of delivery of yoga or yoga therapy, which can be facilitated through research? Because if you say that, no, you do 10 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening, that is sufficient. How do you know that? So research is certainly needed to demonstrate that it is actually producing similar effects what otherwise we look for. And I'm not going to therapy research. This is just one small chart for you. A lot of research has already been done on depression to cancer, bronchial asthma, back pain to women health problems, heart disease to obesity. You see these numbers, 140, 97, 67, 64, 57. You feel that, yes, there is some evidence. You feel happy about it. But let me tell you very clearly, there is a huge scope for you to take up clinical research, because these are very small numbers. Okay, with this, you cannot reach anywhere to ensure that yoga can be used as an efficient and effective intervention, though we know that yoga works. Okay, so long way to go to understand various other aspects related to application of yoga in these conditions. So the scope is very big into clinical research, and every area is a profession. Like mental health is a profession, oncology is another profession, respiratory diseases, while back pain and other things take you to another profession. So the scope of research in using yoga is very big for that matter. And an add-on association to clinical research is application into rehabilitation and palliative care. Once again, you have an amazing scope in, if you want to do research in application of yoga, either as a complementary medicine, as an adjuvant therapy in various neurodegenerative conditions, or acute conditions, or chronic conditions, ranging from stroke to Parkinson's to multiple sclerosis to Alzheimer's. Similarly, cardiac rehab, etc., provides you once again good amount of scope because post-surgery, pre-surgery, where yoga can play a very big role, which we have demonstrated through a 10-year-long follow-up study at Narayan Hridayalaya. Psychiatric rehabilitation, like chronic mental health disorders, where very less is known, though research has progressed the understanding of application of yoga much better in mental health today. Still bring in a huge amount of scope. Sports medicine is very less explored. Ayush Ministry has initiated establishing centers for Ayush-based sports medicine and rehabilitation. Yoga plays a very important role. Research is very new and novel here, and scope is huge, like geriatric medicine as well as special needs, including children. This is one research study what we have conducted in Antarctica. One of our researchers, Dr. Raghavendra Sami, was deputed from SVIASA in collaboration with the Defense Institute of Physiology and Allied Sciences to Antarctica. So why is it important to really take up research of various nature, including looking at influence of yoga on stress and aging process? So there are two labs in Antarctica, Maitri and Bharati, and new lab has been added recently of India. So what we did was, in collaboration with DIPAS, we developed two yoga modules. Okay, one, of course, we did a lot of standardization of these protocols, doing a lot of research on that. And we did one for seasickness, for travel, and another one was for another module for the kind of challenges what people face in Antarctica. So this is for the first time what you see, yoga was done on the glaciers of Antarctica. So this has led to actually providing yoga to several other laboratories in Antarctica. So if you ask me the basic question once again, as I started, can I take research as a profession? I will definitely tell yes, for the following reasons. Number one, be assured this is the second highest paid profession. Even I said the first highest paid profession, which is which involves business management and administration, be it taking a job as a CEO to etc. Research is an integral part there. Without research, even they cannot maintain their position over there. And second thing is research credential certainly provides you an edge for all placements. I have seen it time and again. Somebody with either yoga background or a yoga naturopathy physician with one or two publication, be it when they have done it as part of their master's or PG program or some or independently, when they go to another place, they will be directly recognized, because that everybody looks at as a special quality in an individual that provides you an employment, a better feasibility of an employment compared to going without a research credential. Of course, administrative, of course, your own clinical skills can always provide you that. But in addition to that, if you have research as an add-on professional entity, it will help you. This always provides you a job within a job. Okay, if you have research as an integral part of your activity, imagine you are doing, you are working as a clinician, you are working as yoga instructor, therapist, or whatever it may be. You add some amount of research, you can do multiple tasks along with what you are doing. Because imagine you can be a consultant, you can be an individual working for a project as just on part-time basis, but you having a full-time job. And it also gives you that credibility, what is very much essential for you to progress in your own job. So it gives you that global recognition, visibility, and networking. Why I say that is research is the only way where you can get connected directly with the world. Okay, it also provides you that kind of a visibility. One research paper published in an index journal can take you global. Okay, and it also provides you that networking. I never knew that people from across the world are following my publications. But when I get a request letter that I have read this publication and so interesting, I would like to collaborate with you. Then I look at who is this person. Then somebody writes either from University College London in UK, or someone else writes from another well-known university in Europe or US. Then you feel that, okay, I thought that this work is very small. I remember some work done on children attracts people even today. Okay, I get reprint requests even today because that is something what people feel that they can build research. It also provides you, you might think that research means it's a commitment and you don't have your own free time. Research also provides you a lot of free time. Okay, so you can travel in the name of research, you can have a lot of leisure in the name of research, you can have relaxation. All of them can be byproducts of doing research. Imagine you want to go to a international conference, you are funded. Some funding agency will support you from either government of India or anywhere else, or your own institution can provide. You travel all the way, new place, new people, and you explore so much. And you meet those who are working in similar areas and those who are really accomplished people. You learn a lot. Apart from that, you also have your free time to go around, and you also can make it as a wonderful experience. And last but not least, we have to return something back to the society. And research can actually keep you in that edge of thinking about how do I make something better, which is useful to the society. As it is said, it is very important. It provides you lots of research can take you to entrepreneurship, like you can go for startups, you can develop products, you can do online platforms and provide service-based industry. Finally, I always end by saying this, that research is not just a journey to take it as a profession, but it is part of our life. As Swami Vivekananda said, take up on one idea, make that one idea your life. Think of it, dream of it, and live on that idea. Let the brain, muscles, nerves, every part of your body be full of that idea, and just leave every other idea alone. This is the way to success, and that is the way great spiritual giants have produced. So saying that, once again, I'm reiterating, research is all that good. Research is all that what you can enjoy, and research is life. So welcome all of you. I don't know how many youngsters are there. All those young in mind and young in thinking, you have a huge scope. And thank the organizers for providing this opportunity to share few thoughts. on empowering young minds to take up research, because you have a huge world in it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. It's always very delightful to listening to you, and it's always like hearing the same thing again and every time. We get motivated by your talks, and we hope that this will inspire many of us down here to take up yoga research. And as you told, like, it is always about breaking the stigma, because research is one of the things which is stigmatized, that it is a huge thing that anyone cannot get into it. And seeing you, we all will get inspired, and I'm very sure that we'll take this ahead, that what you have started in BNYS. And thank you so much for accepting a request and joining with us today in the midst of your busy
Thank
schedule.
you. Thank you, Pradeep, and thanks everyone for this opportunity. All the best.
Thank you, sir. So now it's my pleasure to invite our next speaker, Professor Dr. Satyalakshmi Madam. She's the Director of National Institute of Naturopathy. Like right now, like all we have spoken is about how we can do research inside a clinical settings and inside an institute and make things evidence-based. But ultimately, the need of our is like to disseminate the research findings and whether it is really useful to the public. And Professor Satyalakshmi Madam is one of the person which I have seen, like I have fortunate to work with her nearly for 4 years, and one of the person which I have seen that how the public health aspect of research or the public health aspect of any system of medicine need to be explored and primed. So we would like to hear from you, Madam, about your thoughts on what is the roadmap for yoga research in terms of using yoga as a public health tool. Over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Pradeep. Just now we have heard quite a lot. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So, first of all, congratulations, Sant Hardram College, for conducting this 100 Days to Yoga Day program from Bhopal. And congratulations for one more thing, that Naturopathy Institute has come about taking up this program and doing it successfully. And now that we have heard quite a lot about research and how to go about yoga research systematically so that it gets the authenticity, and also one can practice yoga with much more certainty, and so then I would like to tell, as Dr. Pradeep right now mentioned, how do we as naturopaths bring in this research into translation through our clinical practice. And for this, I would like to take your attention a little back to the days when naturopathy community felt that yoga is part and parcel of the naturopathy principles and philosophy. So this happened in 1920 when there was an All India Nature Cure Federation had their meeting in Bejwada. The current Vijayawada was then known as Bejwada. And in that, a resolution was passed saying that all naturopathy curriculum should have yoga as the training component. This made naturopathy a complete thing in itself, because yoga and naturopathy can be a perfect blend wherein recording in progress. One second. I'm sorry for that.
No problem. You need to switch off that speaker, I guess.
Yeah. So in 1920s, when the naturopathy community felt that yoga should be made part and parcel of naturopathy curriculum, and the Indian naturopathy acquired a different momentum and a different dimension altogether in the world naturopathy space. So with that, naturopathy practitioners started seeing the health benefits of yoga. We all know that yoga has multiple applications, and for us, the primary goal is health outcomes. So, in understanding health outcomes, our role has to be more like detective agents. We should be detective agents. Every aspect of human life has to be keenly observed, and a systematic documentation has to be followed by that. And then after compilation and a systematic analysis, and thereby you draw conclusions. This was happening, although not like the modern research rigor and methods, but then it was happening in its own way. So in that process, simultaneously at the same period in 1920s, Kaivalya Dhama, the another yoga institute wherein biomedical research has begun very systematically, following the ICMR model. In fact, the ICMR completely dedicated one magazine to exclusive Kaivalya Dhama biomedical research on yoga. So much interest was put in the yogic research or yoga research in this country. And then, of course, later followed by CCRYN, SVYASA, and AIMS and NIMHANS, and then many other big players have come in. And this is a recent past, but I'm talking about almost 100 years back story, so that it gives us a lot of confidence that yoga can be effectively and authentically, scientifically used as a tool in achieving health outcomes. So for this, the research backup will make us feel more comfortable and foolproof. So what I urge people here is, as rightly mentioned by Dr. Manjunath, there is no point in saying that I know yoga, and compliance is a big issue. And for us also, in our day-to-day clinical practice, we tell people, and when they come to our hospitals, they know for sure that yoga is helping them, and then this particular set of asanas that are taught to them, or pranayama that they practice, or the kind of meditation or yoga nidra that they have done, has really helped them in getting rid of their problem for which they had come. But when they go back to their homes, the practice would be very, very, after some time, they neglect it. And then they come back with the same problem. That means something is not working there. Not the failure of the system, but then the issue of compliance. So we as physicians should know what is actually troubling people to keep compliance. And in order to see that they practice and then get the benefits of yoga, we have to evolve certain mechanisms and then provide places and space in their routine. For this, I think this kind of yoga day programs, and then continuously motivating people to get back to yoga, we have to have as many programs as possible. Otherwise, the benefits of yoga remains in the books and research papers. But people ultimately get benefits only when they practice. So this limitation has to be uh, borne in mind by all clinicians, and make sure that they practice. And for that, wherever possible, however possible, depending on your local conditions and situations, provide avenues. These avenues are could be small gatherings or weekly outings, or on and off workshops, or even reorientation programs or retreats. There can be n number of methods that you may devise, but make sure that they practice. Practice is the crux of yoga. So theory is something different, and practice is something different altogether. And so much so that with regard to meditation also, and it used to be like meant only for people who have completely gone out of public life, that they should do meditation or they should attain nirvana or whatever that is meant was for people who are not in regular public life, and particularly people who are working or in hectic day-to-day activities. They think that meditation is not meant for them. But on the contrary, these days youngsters are proving so much so that meditation is now practiced by youngsters, and then more so in Western countries, and many of them are coming back to India to learn meditation practices, because meditation is not again one type of meditation. There are n number of meditation techniques yoga texts. We have been given as many as more than 120 yoga meditation techniques available. So, but then again, even for meditation, what is important is practice. And in earlier days, what was achievable in 10 years or 15 years of practice of meditation to attain some level of expertise, now they are able to do it in as many as 10 to 15 days. And they're now challenging in retreats. Even in 3 days, you can attain the level of expertise of jhana. So this kind of challenges are showing that, the practice of pranayama, meditation, and asanas need to be looked into more seriously, because we are also seeing a lot of anxiety, anger, and rage, and intolerance. All these things are on one side growing at the same time. But yoga can be applied across the society and of all age groups and all creeds, castes, and sects, and they can easily put it into practice. And there is this common yoga protocol also available to us, with which easily you can get across people, even with some minor health complaints. They can easily practice this simple set of asanas and pranayama, so that they immediately see some health benefits. And when they see and when they appreciate it, hopefully they practice. And not only that they practice, they influence others also to practice. So this way, I think we should proceed, and we are in a on a very right path. So come what may, we will only do good to the society. With that confidence and responsibility, I think we should march forward. And Yoga Day is one such avenue for all naturopaths to take this message to people that health is in your hands and you practice it. We are ultimately sadhakas, so arogya sadhakas. So in that tone, I think I would now take leave. Thank you once again, and congratulations, Sant Bharatram College.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. It's always pleasure listening to you. And you, as rightly said by you, like it should be people-centric. Otherwise, it will remain in the textbooks, and we would never able to achieve. And the overwhelming statistics of cancers and hypertension increasing is a proof that we need to get into the public rather than just keeping it to research and researchers. And thank you so much for joining in between your busy schedule, ma'am. And looking forward to meet you again in some other occasion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So friends, so we have reached to the last session of the day, and so we have an exciting speaker like Dr. Ananda Balayogi Bhagnani, who's the director of SITER, Pondicherry, as well as he's one of the renowned figure, being a modern medical physician, then being inspired by his own like the area where he has been brought up. He was born into yoga rather than like he learned yoga. And I remember one 2012 letter to the editor he has written in International Journal of Yoga, where he spoke similar line with what Dr. Satyalakshmi has spoken, like yoga is never a system of medicine, but yoga padi is a system of medicine. And we should not look yoga as something like a pharmaceutical industry putting yoga into a capsule and delivering it. And he was been very critical, and he's one of the best latitude editor I have ever read. And since I'm following sir, and he's been a honorary advisor for many associations, to name it, International Association of Yoga Therapy, where Dr. Sadbir Singh also represent the same, and also is in the many of the high-level steering committee of Ministry of Ayush. He's also one of the GB member of Central Council for Research in Yoga and Naturopathy, and he's been a mentor of many yoga researchers across the globe. And it is a pleasure to have you, sir. And over to you, sir, to talk the translational value of yoga research.
Thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful event, a conclave on yoga research as part of the Yoga Mahotsav 100 days countdown to IDY 2022. I have been enjoying the session since the morning, and it's been very wonderful to see my dear Dr. Sadbir Khalsa, listen to him today, also listen to my dear Ishwar Basavareti sir, my dear Raghavendra Rao, my dear Manjunath, and now Lakshmi ma'am. I think it's been a very beautiful meal. We have had a very, very fulfilling meal today. So I congratulate all the participants who are part of this. And I'm going to be sharing some thoughts today on the translational value of yoga research. So I'm just going to share my screen, and I hope my screen is visible.
Yes.
And you can just let me know in case it doesn't move. You can let me know, because sometimes with Zoom we have these issues.
Sure.
So today my presentation is on the translational value of yoga research. And in the image you can see here, you see the Guru Parampara who are blessing us, and I invoke their blessings at this time. Om Tad Paramparayaaya Vidmahe Jnanalingeshwaraya Dhimahi Tanno Guruh Prachodayate. Om Yoga Maharshi Dr. Swami Geetananda Giri Guru Maharaj Ki Jai. Om Puduvai Kalemamani Puduvai Shakti Yoga Charini Ammaji Meenakshi Devi Bhavanani Guru Mata Ki Jai. Om Shri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. So today I am representing Sri Balaji Vidyapith, a deemed to be university, health sciences university, accredited with A++ by NAC, one of the top 100 universities in India for the past 7 years, where we have a center for yoga therapy education and research, and salitogenesis is our focus. I hope you can see my slide on salitogenesis coming up, just to check that.
Yes, sir.
Fine.
Yes, sir.
So salitogenesis may be a new term for many of you, and I'm so happy Dr. Pradeep mentioned my yogopathy hypothesis that has been running around for a long time. The new topic is salitogenesis. Salitogenesis is nothing but swasth. It is wellness, wholesome wellness. And what we want to move from is pathogenesis, which is a focus on disease. And we want to move towards a focus on wellness and health, which is salitogenesis. And for this purpose, for the last 11 years, our center at Sri Balaji Vidyapith has been functioning. I would like to pay my respects to my yoga research mentor, Professor Madan Mohanji, who for the past 4 decades has been a pioneer of the integration of yoga and modern medicine. And you can see one of the first papers in 1982, where he and my father, Swami Geetananda, together worked on oxygen consumption and ventilatory changes during Savitri Pranayama and Shavasana. One of the first papers showing the intense rehabilitative, relaxatory, and restorative powers of Shavasana with Savitri Pranayama, one of our traditions. And along with him, I have worked for so many decades and introducing yoga to medical students at JIPMA. You can see them. And our home team, which is Ananda, Udupa, and Madan Mohan. My dear Udupa, Kaviraj is in Nimhans these days. So much work we have been doing from that time. Today, we are looking at translational research. So what does translation mean? Translation means saying things in a way that the other person can understand. So somebody speaks in Hindi to me. I will ask somebody, I don't know so much Hindi, please translate to me. If I speak in Tamil to you, you will say, can somebody translate for me so that I can understand in a language I understand clearly. So basic research, which is fundamental research, and we know that eminent institutions like Kaivalya Dhamma have done a lot of basic research initially. Today, one of the lacuna of modern yoga research is that we lack basic research and we have gone straight into clinical, and that basic should support the clinical and clinical should support the basic so that we move into public health policy. So we have in this framework, discovery, development, implementation, evaluation and review, and research uptake. And this has to keep on going round and round. It's not a one-way process at all. So when we look at yoga research, when did it start? Well, it started with the prehistoric origin of yoga. The great Maharishis who said, Koham, Nanya, who am I? And in modern times, we need scientific, philosophical, literary research. Why do we need it? To confirm, validate, and enhance the understanding of these concepts for the benefit of humanity. If you look at PubMed, and this is right from last night, the latest update, yoga therapy, when you put it into PubMed and search, 6,772 results for yoga therapy in PubMed, which is the gold standard of research. Everybody nowadays looks at Scopus and impact factor and all. Still, PubMed is the gold standard. And if you look at that graph, you will see 1948, how in the last couple of decades, right up to 2022, how that is growing exponentially, especially in the last few decades. When we talk of yoga research, work by Swami Kuvalainanda and Kaivalya Dhamma, scientists like Professor Garote, Bole, Karambelkar and Vinaykar, medical scientists like B.K. Anand and Chinnaji and others at AIMS, Udupa, at BHU, Desi Raju, at NIMHANS, at JIPMA, people like our own Madan Mohan sir, and the most amazing Bijlani sir at AIMS. Today we have yoga universities like S. Vyasa, Patanjali Yoga Peeth. But if you try to look at yoga research today, most of the research is limited to the physical aspects. And again, we are putting yoga into the box to study it, the box of randomized controlled trial. It's a box. We are putting yoga into the box to study yoga. And one of my favorite statements nowadays is, anything in a box is dead. So you have to be careful when you put yoga in a box that you don't kill yoga in the process of studying it. Because most yogic phenomena are beyond the mere physical manifestation. We have done immense research on Shavasana. But if you say the only effect of Shavasana is lowering heart rate and blood pressure, you have missed 90% of what Shavasana is all about. It is the ultimate relaxation and renunciation. Sarva Sankalpa Samnyasi, says the Bhagavad Gita, Yoga Ruda Tada Uchati. Recently, yoga research is a global phenomenon. There are more blinded, randomized controlled trials, better understanding, better standard of research at the physical level is there. And one good thing is in recent times, greater funding is available. But the question is, do we have the equipment to quantitatively and qualitatively measure it? What to do with those aspects that are beyond our present day capacity? And for me, as someone who is a son of my divine mother yoga, how to keep the yoga and yoga research? This becomes the big translational question that I ask. When you're translating yoga into yoga research, how to keep the yoga in it and not kill the yoga by putting it in that box? How can we enable that this knowledge? We are doing a lot of yoga research. Everybody is doing yoga research. Is it coming into the community? Is it coming into public policy? And the answer is not yet. Because we do the research, we publish the paper, and then we are happy. It's on my CV. I have got my promotion from assistant professor to professor. Finished. Kadam, kadam, kadam. No, that's not where it stops. It has to percolate down into clinical practice and the yoga education. Most of the yoga education today is teaching something that was there 50 years ago. Where is the recent research being taught in schools, in educational institutions that are teaching yoga? It is not just to repeat what has been done. And it must not be a sales pitch. Oh, my institution has this research, so I sell it. My institution has a technique, I do research and sell it. No, it has to be for a greater good. And that is why again and again and again, I go back to the statement, basic research is lacking. Why is basic research lacking? It is not as attractive. If I say I'm doing a research in cancer and how it's going to cure cancer by telomere length and blah, 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 everybody is very happy. If I say I want to research the neurophysiological and genetic effects of doing Kapalbhati, they're like, why? Why do you need to do it? I want to understand what is happening down at molecular level when you do Nadi Shuddhi Pranayama. Kahan se paisa milega? Koi dega? Nahi dega. Because they only want to focus on what is attractive, what will get you the headlines. And that is why the danger today is we have jumped into creating models for diseases of techniques when we don't know what the technique is doing in the first place. So we have to go back. Not just one way, it has to go back again and again and again. Search and research and research and research means to go back again and again onto that. And one of the biggest issues in this translational aspect is most researchers don't know what they are studying. They are eminent professionals in their own field. They heard, yoga is very popular. I can get some money from some funding agency. So they will do the research. They have no idea what is being done in that research at all. Because they don't know what is yoga. They have not experienced yoga. Need of the hour, we have to focus on the core concepts of yoga. We need to extend our basic research. And most modern yoga research is trying to find a single yoga pill for each ill. Can I have one pranayama for diabetes, one asana for, hypertension? Well, it may not be so simple. My dear Sadhguru Khalsa and his team, they did a review and they found in the last decade, threefold increase in the studies. There are more RCTs and the focus is on mental health, cardiovascular health and respiratory health. But what we need to understand is this has increased, but has it come down to the community? Has it got translated into terms that the lay person understands? Do the yoga teachers and professionals down at grassroots, have they got that message? Well, the answer is not much. Because it doesn't matter how many resources you have. Look at this person, he has all those ladders. He has hundreds of ladders, but he's not able to climb the wall. All he needs is one good ladder to climb that wall. So he has the resources, he doesn't know how to use it because nobody has taught him that. This is where translation comes in. What is there in the research studies? How do you bring it into clinical practice? How do you bring it into teachers training? How do you bring it into therapist training? That is where translation comes in. And some time back, I did a qualitative study on utilization of yoga research. I mailed so many yoga teachers and therapists around the world. Everybody said, yes, 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 we need research, we need update, but they were not reading the latest papers. Their information on yoga research was based on newspaper headlines. Newspaper headlines are not news. Most of the time, fake news here. You have to go to the actual study. I'll give you some examples today of that. So who are the key players in this? The student, the therapist, the patient, the researcher, the teacher, and each one has to feed each other. The student must say, I want to know what is the latest research. You ask your professor. They are still talking of 1922. Ask them, 2022, what are the yoga research papers? Tell me. Then the professor has to learn about it. This is how the student drives the educational policy. The therapist should say, what is the latest information on yoga therapy? The patient should ask, you are just teaching me what is the latest update on this. The researcher should try to find that and the teacher should be teaching it. This is how this translation becomes a living system, not just a one-way track. So the patient-derived discoveries, clinical trials, health challenge, basic research discoveries, they are feeding each other. A constant feed in multi-dimension. You can see these arrows are all going in all directions. The research discovery leads to a patient-derived discovery. I will tell an example of this soon. Clinical trials will go backward. Health challenge will lead this way. And it is all interrelated. And this is why the human diseases that are there, the ideas and hypotheses that are there, especially in the young minds. India is one of the youngest countries in the world. We have young, innovative minds. We have to tap that resource. Basic research findings, innovations and discoveries, intellectual property. We need to stand up for intellectual property rights of our tradition. Development pipeline, clinical trials, regulatory approval. All of this has to feed each other in the clinical research and translational medicine. So I want to give you some ideas of some studies which have this translational value and give you examples of what I'm talking about. In 1991, now you say, sir, that seems like very, very long ago, because many of you are not born in that time. Also, you're born after that. This is still in my time. Desi Raju and Tellis, Shirley Tellis, the most prolific yoga researcher, her mentor was Desi Raju sir at Nimhans. And they found there's a difference between short Kumbhak Pranayama, long Kumbhak Pranayama. Now, how many yoga professionals have been told this? They have been taught do Kumbhaka. But there's a difference. When you do short Kumbhak, there's an increase in oxygen consumption. When you do long Pranayama Kumbhak, there is lowering of it. Just look at that. Do you want to enhance oxygen consumption or do you want to decrease it? The alteration of Kumbhak is different. Now, this information, please tell me, is it there in any modern yoga training manual? How many medical professionals who are practicing yoga therapy know of this difference? So your patient who you want to increase oxygen consumption, you want to help them burn up the fat. So you increase oxygen consumption to burn up the fat. Short Kumbhak should be given. This is where the therapeutic application. Then you give it to people who have obesity. See what is happening. Feed it back. This is where translation occurs. But we don't know it exists. So then how can we translate it? पहला तो कुछ होना चाहिए, पता होना चाहिए, उसके बाद उसको translate कर सकते. That is why basic knowledge has to be there. Another study, 1993, the year I joined MBBS, by Shanov Khalsa. This is different than Sadhbir. They have shown right nostril is different than left nostril. And this led to so many studies, including by Raghuraj, our own team at JIPMER, where we have substantiated this difference between right nostril, left nostril. Again, tell us, oxygen consumption, if you do right nostril, you increase it. So if you want to burn fat, right nostril breathing. You don't want to burn fat, alternate nostril breathing. And this is how we start to understand the sympathetic parasympathetic effect. And this is why I'll come to a good story from JIPMER. When I was working with our team there, Madan Mohan sir, Zena and others, we had done a study on Chandra Nadi, left nostril breathing. It was published in International Journal of Yoga in 2012. And everybody is happy. You do left nostril, hypertension thoda kam ho jayega, BP kam ho jayega. Everybody is very happy. So one patient, I gave this left nostril breathing, Chandra Nadi Pranayama. That patient came back after 1 month. His BP was good. I said, this is wonderful. He said, yes, doctor, but one small thing. I said, what? He said, you told me to do left nostril. I was doing right nostril for 1 month. Ek mahina, that person was doing right nostril when I told him to do left nostril, but he still benefited. So see what has happened. Research was there, application was there. Now patient had a different experience. We didn't stop there. We did a next study where we did right nostril breathing Surya Nadi Pranayama in hypertensives. Now normally we say right nostril is contraindicated. But because of that patient's feedback, this is translation medicine. How it goes from the lab to the clinical practice, from the patient, it comes back to the lab. And what we found is when the person has hypertension, doing Surya Nadi Pranayama doesn't increase the blood pressure. So this is where we start to find new aspects, that it is not what we thought, there's something new. So Surya Nadi, we said, may be safe for hypertensives. You still suggest Chandra Nadi, but you don't have to say, oh, Surya Nadi is contraindicated. You prefer Chandra Nadi. This is how translational research goes on. Similarly, the study by Selvamurthy sir in 1998, where they put the person upside down, head down tilt, and they found that by doing this Sarvangasana and head down tilt, improvement in baroreflex sensitivity. Now what happened? People stopped at that. Still people are running around saying, don't do head below the heart if you have hypertension. No, head below the heart is useful in hypertension. And again we are finding, not Shirsasana, but there are so many practices where you can do Pada Hastasana, head is below the heart. Meru Asana, that is the mountain posture, which is part of Surya Namaskar, head is below the heart. All the head below the heart postures are helping to restore baroreflex mechanisms and bring down blood pressure. So then from the lab to the clinical practice, and then you start to take it back and forth, and you develop, the whole system is developed by doing this. Again, studies by Raghuraj. If you do Kapalbhati and Nadi Shuddhi, there is a difference in sympathetic and vagal activity. Now, how many people are knowing that? Everybody wants to do Kapalbhati. Everybody wants to do Kapalbhati today. But we have to be very careful. If already the sympathetic tone is high and they do Kapalbhati, it may not be good. So we have to have this knowledge, take it to the clinical side. Then we have to see, nobody has yet done it. What happens in somebody who has high sympathetic activity? If you do Kapalbhati, what happens to HRV? This is how it goes the other way when you talk about translation in yoga research. Another study, Vijay Lakshmi at JIPMER, where we showed yoga-based relaxation reduces blood pressure and hypertension. Everybody knows this. But those hypertensive subjects, unka sympathetic tone was also lower than normal. By doing the yoga-based relaxation, sympathetic tone also came to normal. And this is why later on we have done multiple studies. It is not that just yoga brings down sympathetic and enhances parasympathetic. If that sympathetic is lower than normal, that sympathetic tone will also be brought up to normal. This is what you start to find when you go right down into the clinical practice. So the research in yoga shouldn't be limited to the lab. Shouldn't just be done to get funding and submit your report. This is what everybody does. It has to be brought into the clinical practice, and then it has to feed back into future research. Another study, slow pranayama and fast pranayama, they are different. Again, so many RCTs we have done on this. So some patient will need slow, some patient will need fast. Then what happens when you apply it and you go back and forth to create a knowledge base? That knowledge base of yoga research that will then feed into yoga therapy, clinical practice, patient experience, and public health policy. Another study, Manjunatha and others, on diabetes and insulin. Because till then everybody was telling you do twisting posture, insulin will go up and diabetes is controlled. In their study, they found when you do the yoga asana, insulin doesn't, what happens to insulin? It doesn't go up, it goes down. They actually found the opposite. Because what is happening? It is not about pancreas secreting insulin. It is about your cells becoming more sensitive to insulin. You are breaking down insulin resistance. That is what is happening. And just now, this year in January, we have published the latest paper, again confirming how this insulin resistance is broken down in clinical practice when you bring in the yoga therapy. Another study by Dr. Raghavendra Rao, you heard him speak today, and I am under his guidance. I'm so happy CCRYN is going forward under his guidance in a wonderful way. What we did, we found there is this basic study, bring it into the clinical practice. So at Kaivalya Dhamma, Lee Majeski, Subodh Tiwari and myself, we set up a program, 3 weeks of cancer care, residential program. What happens when you bring the yoga into the person's life and you see the transformation? So from the lab into the clinical practice, it is coming. And then it is becoming part of policy. And today, one of the best-selling books is by Lee and myself on this very topic, based on the research. So the research is feeding the clinical practice, feeding the experience that the patient has who comes to yoga therapy. And again, slow Surya Namaskar, fast Surya Namaskar, they are very different. Today we have the 75 crore Surya Namaskar, 75 lakh Surya Namaskar was done on Makar Sankranti. All this is being done. When you do it fast, it is different. When you do it slow, it is different. And this message is being taken forward. And then what a beautiful study by Gangadhar sir and his daughter, D.G. Kalyani at Nimhans. When you chant Om, when you chant that Omkar, the limbic deactivation they found in functional MRI. So what did we do? We said, okay, fine, this is very nice. But then can you bring it into clinical practice? And so we have a technique in our tradition, Pranava Pranayama, where you do and you bring it together. So this we were teaching. We found it very useful in hypertensives. Study along with Dr. Basav Reddy ji and our team, Madan Mohan sir and Dr. Zina. When we did this work, what did we find? Pranava Pranayama reduces blood pressure and hypertensive. Good. Then when we gave it, many of the patients, they said, we cannot sit, sir. We want to lie down. So our yoga teacher was teaching the patient Pranava Pranayama lying down. Now, instead of saying, oh, that is wrong, we said, okay, let us study that. So from the previous study, we studied, took it to the patient, and then we found what is happening to that patient. They cannot sit long time. They want to do it lying down. So then the next study showed when you do it lying down, it is effective also in hypertension and diabetes. Then the next level, stroke patients. What happens to transcranial Doppler flow when you do pranava? Again, it goes up. And then what is the mechanism? We found the benefit. We wanted to understand the mechanism. We went back to the lab and a study showing that pranava has the most sinus arrhythmia, respiratory sinus arrhythmia, which means when you breathe out, your heart rate becomes slower. When you breathe in, your heart rate becomes faster. And in pranava, elongated exhalation is enhancing respiratory sinus arrhythmia. This is now a mechanism. So basic research becoming clinical, clinical research going to the patient, patient feeding back to clinical research feeding back into the basic research. A full cycle is happening with the translation here. And today we know, thanks to Streeter and team, that something called the allostatic load. Normally you have something called homeostasis to maintain samatvam. But then when you have stress and you're trying to maintain samatvam, you go into allostatic. Allostatic load, allostasis is altered homeostasis. It is like an elephant sitting on your shoulder the whole day. So what you need to do is reduce that elephant. How do you reduce that elephant? Yoga helps you reduce that elephant. So the mountain becomes a molehill. The problem which was a tsunami becomes a wave when you practice. And what a beautiful study from Dean Ornish, showing that even your genetic markers, the telomeres, which are your genes, that even they can change. And they did one of the biggest follow-up studies. One of the biggest drawbacks in yoga research is we don't have much follow-up. Very, very less follow-up. They did a 5 years follow-up and they found the telomere length, the relative length was increasing. This is where you take it into follow-up and you bring it into the practice. And this is why we have to develop new approaches. We have to demonstrate the usefulness. We need to disseminate the finding. All my research findings, I put them on academia, I put them on ResearchGate, share them freely with people. I talk about them wherever I go, I share so that you disseminate the finding. People should know it has happened. If they don't know, how will they apply it? If you don't tell them, how will they translate? And this is where basic research, preclinical research, clinical implementation and public health, all of them are centered around one person. Who is that person? The patient. All our efforts must be to enhance patient care because that is the fundamental aspect of healthcare. Why does a hospital exist? For the sake of the patient. Why does an educational institution exist? For the sake of the student. And if we forget this, we will not give good education. We will not give good healthcare. Healthcare means we have to care. Care about whom? The patient. So all of this should benefit the patient. When the patient talks about the experience, listen to them. Bring it into your heart. Take it to the lab and find new pathways. But you know what happens? Person doing research has nothing to do with clinical work. Clinician does no research and patient, nobody listens to them. How will translation occur? Kahan hoga? This is why researchers must be practicing, clinicians must be practicing, patients must be practicing, all practicing yoga, and all of them communicating. Communication is the key for translation to happen in research. And this is why I would like to share a few funny things before I end today. We look at a lot of yoga research, but some studies have no yoga in them at all. They are beautiful study, but no yoga. There was one study, and I apologize to the authors for this study, but this is one of the best examples of no yoga. You look at this study. They did a study published in a very reputed journal where they said there is no change in HbA1c when they did for the patients of diabetes. So yoga is not useful. That was the conclusion of that study. When you go and analyze that study, they said of the diabetic register, 2/3 of the patient, they were not eligible. Uska matlab hai 100 se 66% gaya, 33% hai, 33% se 90% declined to participate. So 90% of 33 is about 3%. So only 3% of eligible were willing to participate. Of that, only 50% attendance in class. And nobody did it at home. Now, what type of yoga teacher you are that your patient doesn't want to do? Not even one wanted to do at home. Itna to bekar teacher hai kya? That nobody wants to do at home. 50% did. And most of the participants unsuitable for standard yoga. Because of lack of fitness, blah, blah, blah. Iska matlab kya hai? Is study mein study bahut बढ़िया है, लेकिन yoga नहीं है उस. And this will be quoted by people, oh, yoga doesn't work in diabetes according to that research. No, look at the study, look at the methodology. I am giving you a small bit of advice. I never like to give advice unless asked, but I'm giving you this advice today. Please, in any yoga research paper, don't read the title, don't read the finding, read the methodology. If you read the methodology of the scientific paper, you will understand what research is all about. And don't take it from headlines in newspaper. That is the most bogus fake news. Second thing, be sure that the study is done in human. Now, sometime back, kya hua? There was one very big headline. If you sleep on your side, the brain metabolic waste product is cleaned and halts neurological disease. Everybody started talking on Facebook. Everybody on Twitter. I lie down on my side. It is good for me. He lies down on the side. I tell my patient. Nobody looked at the actual paper. I went and looked at that paper. It was done in rats, rodent model, not human study. They had done a rat study to look at the glymphatic pathway. That is the lymphatics in the brain. And it was not at all in human. But because people only looked at the headline, they started talking about it as if everybody had proved it. It was still in rats, not yet human being. And this is why at CITER over the last 11 years, we have been trying to bring this into the actuality. Whatever I'm talking about, we have tried to bring into practice because here we do yoga research, we do yoga therapy, and we also have yoga therapy education. When you have all three in one place, you can bring this together. We have looked at essential hypertension, psychiatry, chronic kidney disease, healthcare professionals who don't sleep, sleep deprivation. How does yoga help them? Chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, how does yoga help? In pregnant mother, how the pranava chanting can help. Before angiography, there's a lot of anxiety. How can you reduce it? This is right down into clinical care. Then autism spectrum, diabetic lung. Many of you would not even think that diabetic, one of the target organs is lung. We always think kidney is target organ, eyes are target organ, brain is target organ, heart is target organ, lung is also a target organ, and how yoga can help there. Chronic rhinosinusitis, Brahmari pranayama. Autism spectrum, oral health of the children is low. How can you bring yoga into it and enhance oral hygiene? Depression, craving in alcohol de-addiction. How can you protect the kidneys in diabetic patient? How can you help the senior ladies, inmates of a hospice? All of this we are working right down into the society, into the patient care population. Dentistry. Some of the first studies of yoga in dentistry are being done here at CITER of SBV. You are going to have a root canal treatment. You have so much of tension. How can you reduce it through yoga? What are the myths and misconceptions of yoga therapy in psychiatry? Psoriasis, skin issues, how yoga can help. Non-specific mechanical pain, how you can help. Lymphedema, how the lower extremity function can be enhanced. Metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. These are just the highlight, 23 highlight studies I'm talking about from the past 11 years. Because when we look at yoga research, we have to understand, we have to look at the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. And so last year we published the new OM team, that is Ananda, Udupa, and Meena now, because Madan Mohan sir is retired from active work here. So now we have Dr. Meena there, and a SWOT analysis where we looked at it. What are the factors? What are the strengths of yoga, the cultural heritage and all? What is the weakness of yoga research? Low scientific vigor, not well validated. What are the strengths? We can have good design, in-depth studies. And what are we looking at? We want to design studies that counter all of this. And we want to look at how to enhance compliance. Lakshmi ma'am was talking about that. Compliance is a very big issue. How can we work on that? And how can we overcome the prejudice that many scientific organizations have? Because they doubt our data. They doubt our data collection, analysis, and interpretation. We have to show that we have integrity. And this is why even when you get negative results, you must publish. You must publish negative results also. Don't just think, oh, I need to only publish positive results. Because of that, people doubt us. And this is why we have to show that we are worthy. We have the integrity. Our paas ye integrity hai, yogyata hai, by publishing even when the findings are not in tune with what we want. And that is why my dear Dr. Dilip Sarkar, past president of American Heart Association, an international association of yoga therapists, he says, this is 21st century medicine. That is what we are aiming for. That is what we are trying to do right here at Citer of SPB. And the last message before I leave you for today. For too long, we human beings have thought we are the big boss. We think we own the planet. We think we are the top of everything. And we have had authoritarian, dualistic, unsustainable, delusional methodologies. We must move from an ego-logical to an ecological frame of thinking. A paradigm shift where we realize we are part of the whole planet. We are part of this whole ecosystem. And we have a responsibility to be a caretaker of this planet. We are not the owner of this planet. We are the caretaker. And to be a caretaker, you must take care in a loving manner, with compassion, with empathy, and supporting each and every living being on this planet. Gratitude is the highest attitude. And so my gratitude to the organizing team for giving me a chance to share these thoughts today with you. Thoughts that are in my heart, in my mind. And you have given me an opportunity to express them to all the young people who hopefully will have a spark and become the future bright lights of not just our beloved country, but the whole world. That is my prayer. That is my blessing for all of us today on this wonderful occasion, celebrating the Yoga Mahotsav. Namaste, Dhanyavadaha. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. As you rightly told, we were having a meal and this came out as a dessert for all of us. And we thoroughly enjoyed your talk. And like, as I quoted in the last one, like 2012, since I saw that, like, it should not be in a box. Like, we have quoted that, and you have quoted something on intravention and intervention also in that particular letter to the editor. And the way what you have explained right now, it is like, it is for every researcher, every physician, it is something where we need to take ahead in terms of to whom we are basically doing all these things. Like, if the end user is not benefited, and every system of medicine, we are moving away from the philosophy with that system is being built. So that is one of the biggest problem what we have. And we are having a lot of researchers, lot of research papers, but problems are also increasing simultaneously. And I think this is a spark, as you told, and many of us will take this ahead with your guidance and looking for active collaborations in future as well. And thank you so much for spending in time, and namaste. Thank you. Bye-bye. So thank you so much, every participants, for joining with us from morning 6 o'clock. And right now, it's like we have been a long run, but it was a very fruitful program since morning. And now I think this is the end of that national conclave for yoga research and its applications. And we will be having an yoga manthan in the evening by 6 to 7, where we will have a complete talk on Hindi, which will be led by Dr. Jyoti Keswan, who is the HOD for Department of Yoga in Sanjay Zara Medical College. And I hope you all will join in that as well. And thank you so much, and have a nice day, and let us promote yoga. Thank you.